4th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. We do have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order. Clerk, please read the procedures for addressing council.
Individuals wishing to speak on public and non-public hearing agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Those wishing to speak on quasi-judicial public hearings must complete a sign-up card and sign the oath. Sign-up and oath cards are available on the table in the council chamber. Next, individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions and requests from the public present. This opportunity is offered twice in the meeting, and individuals may speak at either the first or second petitions and requests, but not both. No sign-up card is required. And finally, citizens shall not comment on any issue more than once during the meeting. All comments except petitions and requests must address the pending issue, and citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak on all agenda items.
Thank you, Clerk. Next item is invocation. Please join me in a moment of silent meditation. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meetings on August 27th, 2019 and September 10th, 2019.
Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Next item is special recognitions and presentations. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. We're going to recognize Cindy Garce from our Risk Management Department of the Support Services Department for the Employee of the Month for August 2019, and our HR Director, Mr. Joe De Niro, will provide the narrative.
Good evening, Mayor, Council
Good evening,
members.
sir.
So Cindy, our risk manager and HR team member, fellow team member, was selected as the Employee of the Month for the month of August. So Cindy's workload, essentially each day, is faced with complaints, injuries, accidents, and liability. So in the context of that, just want to share with you some of the comments that her fellow coworkers had made. Cindy Garce has done an exceptional job at taking on the difficult position of risk manager. As the new risk manager, she has recognized the most important tasks to tackle first and the programs to get back on track for the benefit of the city and its residents. She is a self-starter who learned the risk management of the city with direction from her HR team members, legal office, attending meetings, interacting with the operating departments, insurance broker and adjusters, all of whom consulted to help her with her job. She reopened cases that were unresolved, recovering maximum reimbursements for the city, an amount of $51,000 to date. Cindy has created a more streamlined, user-friendly, and organized digital filing system. She's continually verifying that the city's insurance is adequate with providing the protection that the city and its residents need in the occurrence of a major event. Cindy is developing a solid working relationship with all the employees of the city and continually working with supervisors and employees regarding timely reporting of workers' comp, automobile property damage claims. Cindy is diligently updating the following documents and manuals with the current safety information: City of Titusville Personnel Policies Manual, Drug and Alcohol Policy. By the way, she is actively involved in our collective bargaining negotiations and updating the drug and alcohol policies that are contained in those collective bargaining agreements. The new hire handbook, City of Titusville, City of Policy Acknowledgement, including employee acknowledgement and receipt of drug-free workplace summaries. She is extremely proactive in her position and makes it a point to attend hearings with outside counsel for workers' compensation, automobile and general liability lawsuits, and upon receipt of a claim, meeting with the citizen to discuss loss and determine if what responsibility lies with the city for any damages. Cindy has been a true breath of fresh air in Human Resources Department. She deserves to be recognized for the outstanding job she has done making sure the employees are safe and the city's assets are protected. And lastly, I wanted to comment on a personal observation that I was leaving one evening, and as you know, you may know that the Pritchard House sustained some damage, I think some lightning damage. And I was parking over at the annex, and I'm walking over to my car, and I see Cindy's car in front of the Pritchard House, and she's lugging and tugging out bubble wrap and storage boxes over the Pritchard House. And I walked over to try and help her, and we're carrying out these boxes and bubble wrap up to the house. And I asked her, I said, Cindy, what are you doing? She said, well, I went out and I wanted to be sure that the staff who was going to be there the next morning had the necessary boxes, bubble wrap, to store some of the artifacts that they had at the Pritchard House so they could move them to storage in a safer place. So this really just is a, I guess, just one event out of what she does that exceeds her job standards. Thank you.
Mayor, could I have you join us down on the floor and make a presentation?
Yeah.
Cindy, come on up.
Hi, Cindy. How are you? I'm very pleased and proud to give this to you because I see how hard you work too. I pass your door every time I come in and out of the building. So with that, you have this certificate for Employee of the Month, and you have a prize. Why don't you stand over here and get some pictures? Why don't you bring that up and you can, yeah. Hold that
There
one.
we go.
You already knew that, right? Congratulations, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item is letters of appreciation.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, I'd like to read the letters of appreciation that we've received this month. For the record, Scott Devine from our water distribution supervisor, Dalton Baker, Vincent Doris, Michael Lindo, Brian Potters, Billy Thompson, all from the police department. And from the community development department, Mr. Steve Adams, Paul Bollington, Tish Hood, and Samantha Osorio.
Very good. Next item is boards and commissions.
Yes, sir. The Planning and Zoning Commission, regular member Arlen Baker has submitted her resignation effective August 28, 2019 due to personal reasons. Her term expires on January 31st, 2020. The Titusville Environmental Commission regular member Brian Bobbitt has expressed his desire to serve in a dual role capacity and serve on both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Titusville Environmental Commission. Staff is recommending council appoint Mr. Bobbitt as regular member to the P&Z Commission for a term to expire on 31 January 2020.
We need two votes on this. We'll have, we need to accept the resignation of Arlen Baker with regrets as usually.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the resignation of
Arlen Baker.
Arlen Baker, yes.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Before you go to vote for Mr. Bobbitt, we do have a card for Mr. Bobbitt, so.
You have a card? Yes, sir. Would you like to come up?
No.
You don't have to. If you'd like to, you can.
If there's any questions, I can respond to them, otherwise.
Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
You got out of it, see? All right, I will accept the motion.
I move to appoint Brian Bobbitt as a member of Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye. I say yes?
Yes.
I knew I was going to do that one of these days. That's, any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. Congratulations, sir. Next item, sir?
Yes, sir. And council accept the North Brevard County Hospital District Board semi-annual report as presented by Junior Colonel Herman Colt.
He just loves to rub it in, doesn't he?
He's actually not a junior colonel. I am not the junior colonel. He's the junior colonel. What was your date of rank, Colonel Larice?
7 May
Huh? What'd you say?
1983.
Yeah, okay, all right.
What do you say, 19?
You're the junior colonel. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Johnson and members of City Council. I am Herman Cole, Chairman of the Parish Medical Center Board of Directors. It is my honor to present to you our Parish Medical Center semi-annual report. A written report has been provided that details the accomplishments and outcomes achieved by Parish Medical Center since our last report. I'd like to take this opportunity this evening to highlight a few key areas we believe of particular interest to you and to our communities. In March, I shared with you an open letter to the Brevard community about the federal court ruling declining to overturn PMC's decision not to renew the medical staff privileges of 7 oncologists. We have shared a follow-up letter to the community about the most recent ruling in this case. We share this with you because as Parish Medical Center, we are deeply committed to hospital quality initiatives for the benefit of our patients and our North Brevard community. On August 22nd, 2019, U.S. District Court Judge Roy Dalton issued the federal court's granting summary judgment in favor of Parish Medical Center and against the 7 physicians on all counts of their amended complaint. The federal court has validated the review and decisions of Parish Medical Center's executive committee, board of directors, and administration. Patients and families who are battling cancer deserve the highest quality and most compassionate care and the confidence of an accredited cancer program like PMC affords them. We live in an age where patient-centered data and hospital quality initiatives are inextricably tied to patient well-being. That Parish Medical Center's board, CEO, and managed care officers stood firm for that principle, despite the fierce opposition faced from other interests, is both inspiring and comforting to our community. You have a copy of the full summary judgment and a letter in your report for your reference. In related news, we are pleased that our cancer program continues to grow and expand its scope of services. In March, I introduced oncology physician Patricia Diesler, who joined our cancer program and the community. Since then, she has purchased a home in Titusville and enjoys living and working here. Joining her at Parish Cancer Center this year are Dr. Stephen Yandel, board-certified hematology oncology. Dr. Yandel has 25 years of experience and was instrumental in creating national protocols for cancer-related treatments and diagnostic imaging. Dr. Uzma Malik, board-certified in radiation oncology. Dr. Malik has more than 20 years of experience and was named one of the top oncologists by the International Association of Oncologists. We are pleased to have them join our growing cancer program. Also supporting our quality cancer care initiatives, in addition, we have new technology. Parish Medical Center now offers newly FDA-approved advanced PET CT scan imaging. This new imaging technique is for patients with suspected recurrent prostate cancer. The new technology has the ability to detect cancer at the cellular level. And as we know, that the earlier cancer is detected, the better. In addition to the growth we're seeing in our cancer program, our medical group also continues to grow. We are recruiting and bringing in more specialists and primary care providers to the community. We are pleased to welcome board-certified urologist physician Mark Lick to the community. Dr. Lick is highly specialized and trained in neurourology and andrology. Try to pronounce all of that out at the same time. It's hard. He received training at Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Ohio, and he completed his fellowship training at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Also joining the parish family is gastrologist. Yeah, okay. I'll let my vice chair say gastroenterologist, Dr. Khalid George. Dr. George received training at Henry Ford Hospital and completed his fellowship at Providence Park Hospital. I look forward to announcing additional new providers that PMC is bringing in to serve the community at our next report. As the board chair for Parish Medical Center, it has been a great honor to be able to consistently report to you the outstanding quality outcomes being achieved by Parish Medical Care Partners. Tonight, I am again honored to report that Parish Medical Center has again earned an A for patient safety from the Leapfrog Group. The designation recognizes Parish Medical Center's effort in protecting patients from harm and providing a safer health care. Lastly, I am pleased to announce that last night, at a special meeting of the Board of Directors, the 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment for North Brevard County was approved. Federal health reform legislation requires all not-for-profit hospitals to conduct a community health needs assessment once every 3 years. Through the health needs assessment process, we engaged a random sample of 300 North Brevard residents and 75 members of our Community Health Partnership who represent health and human services, social services, civic and faith-based organizations, among others, to identify and prioritize unmet health needs specific to North Brevard. The top 10 priorities the board approved to develop a 3-year implementation plan around include, I'm not sure you can see those, so I'll just read them off. Number 1 from the group was mental health. Number 2 was health, disease, and stroke. 3 was diabetes. 4 was nutrition and physical activity, weight. 5 was substance abuse. 6 was access to health care. 7 was cancer. 8 was respiratory diseases. 9 was tobacco use. 10 was potentially disabling conditions. We are guided by our vision of healing families, healing communities. We look forward to continuing to serve with excellence our community's health needs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
None from Robert.
You better not have it. I see no questions, sir, and thank you very much. Very well done.
Thank you very much.
We need a motion on that to accept North Brevard County Hospital District Board semi-annual report as presented.
I'd make that motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Next item, sir.
The North Brevard Library District Board, the terms of regular members Robert Barrows, Jan Corbin, and William Schaefer Jr. expire on 30 September 2019. Mr. Barrows, Ms. Corbin, and Mr. Schaefer have all expressed their willingness and desire to continue to serve on this board and have requested reappointment to a 2-year term to expire on 30 September 2021. Their applications are attached for your consideration.
Are there any cards on this, clerk?
No, sir.
No cards? Okay. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Robert Barrows, Jan Corbin, and William Schaefer Jr. to the North Brevard Library District Board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. Next item, please.
We're on Agenda 6D, North Brevard Commission on Park and Recs. Currently, there's one vacancy with an unexpired term to expire on 31 August 2020. There's currently one application on file for consideration. Mr. Andrew Connors has expressed his willingness and desire to serve on this commission. His application is attached for your council's consideration. There are no other applications on file for your consideration, and I believe we have a card from Mr. Connors.
Sir, would you like to come up? Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Connors. I live at 3448 Willis Drive, Titusville, Florida.
Any questions of the gentleman? I thought you were going to go right into it.
I have a question.
You do? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor?
I guess my question is, first and foremost, what makes you want to be on this board?
Well, I was sitting there back in my seat thinking about it, and, with the exception of the last year, in the last decade, I couldn't tell you the last time I've been to a park. But as a father of a 1.5-year-old, I've been to the park 100 times now. So something that was never a forefront of something that was of interest to me now is. And as somebody who's looking to raise a family here and make this community the best possible for my son, the best way I can do that is to show him to get involved, be proactive, to make this community as best as possible.
Good.
Thank you.
Good answer.
Yeah, it really was.
Good question.
And I think you'll enjoy that board, assuming they appoint you. Because I was on it for several terms, and a very meaningful board for the same reasons, some of the same reasons. I don't have a 1.5-year-old. I do have grandchildren.
Keeps me busy.
So, any other comments?
That's cool.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we appoint Mr. Andrew Connors to the North Brevard Commission on Parks and Recreation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? You got it.
Thank you very
Congratulations.
much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next item is petitions and requests. Do we have cards?
Sir, three people did submit cards, and I know this is open forum. No card is required.
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I don't know why I said that. First up, please. Yes.
Thank you. Hello, Holly Carver, Rocket City Real Estate, 1209 South Washington Avenue. Recently, we have encountered challenges with trying to help a new brewery secure a location within the city of Titusville. After thoroughly vetting 8 properties, including several meetings with Peggy and the staff, who have been wonderful, none of those were viable options. And we've discovered that the issues are not specific to this client, but instead might prevent market growth in this popular industry due to the absence of definition, zoning, codes, or ordinances. The Brewers Association defines 6 distinct craft beer market segments: microbrewery, brew pub, taproom brewery, regional brewery, contract brewing company, and alternating proprietor. The City of Titusville's Municode has definitions only for craft brewery/craft distillery and drinking establishments, which includes bar, tavern, club. The City of Titusville's Municode addresses microbrewery in the use table. However, microbrewery is not defined. Definitions don't address a taproom brewery or the other segments. Taproom appears to be the category that most popular destinations that we're seeing in thriving communities, which often includes a beer garden and outdoor seating. That definition provided by the Brewers Association is a professional brewery that sells 25% or more of its beer on site, does not operate significant food services. The beer is brewed primarily for sale in the taproom and is often dispensed directly from the brewery's storage tanks. And where allowed by law, those taproom breweries often sell beer to go or distribute to offsite accounts. Since there's not a definition that fits that in these codes, we've tried to work under the craft brewery or drinking establishment or microbrewery designations. None of those include locations in the community commercial, neighborhood commercial, or tourist areas, which are typical retail, restaurant, tourist destinations. Most of the codes include industrial areas, which are off the main grid and not ideal for retail or a brewery. Of particular frustration, the Urban Mixed Use Code says that a brewery or microbrewery is allowed with limitations. That limitation is that it must have existed before December 8th of 2009. So that one didn't work either. Respectfully, we're here to request council to approve an advisability to create an ordinance for other segments of the brewing industry, in particular a taproom brewery, providing a definition and appropriate locations within the city limits. Also wanted to let you know that our clients who are members of the Brewing Association, Nikki and Scott Corning, are here with us tonight, and they said they'd make themselves available to talk with staff about the details, intricacies of what that might be needed to create those destinations.
All right, does anybody have questions for those individuals? We don't, but Mr. Saka, would you come up? Member Jordan, you have a question?
I'll wait till she. Oh, you're not going to say anything?
I have no prepared speech.
Well, then I'll ask the question. I guess I got a little confused being the new person on. I thought we discussed this
That's
before.
getting old, you know.
What, that I got confused or wow, okay. That's the second time, second week. Okay, anyway. I thought we had discussed this, and I thought I had asked for advisability before, but apparently I didn't. I think it's a good idea for us to look at it. So if the council is okay, I would ask that we request staff to look at the advisability of having a tap brewery.
You have somebody else that wants to speak, and then we can look at that. Member Nelson?
I'm in agreement with Robert. It looks like that we need to work on some of our definitions. I mean, it's a new industry, a new way of doing business. So maybe it's time to look at it. And it's very popular. So,
Staff totally agrees.
so yeah, if we can look at
We
it,
are
that'd
happy
be
to do
great.
it.
Everybody's in agreement. It can't be better than that. And does anyone on council disagree? Let me put it that way, because
No, I just wanted to add that I appreciate Ms. Carver and the phone call that we got to have along those lines. And it looks like you've looked at every angle and tried to make it work. And I appreciate you doing that so you can bring this to us to realize we might need some movement on that. So I certainly agree with the advisement to move forward. And thank you for bringing that to us.
you don't need a motion on that, do you? You have
I think
enough information? Okay,
There you go.
it's done. Next, anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Joe Hill, 4490 here in Titusville. I just wanted to mention that I was really surprised. I started digging around on the website for the agenda because I heard there was something coming up that I was interested in. And used to, you could go on the website and you could find the attachments and more detail. Now you just get a snapshot of the agenda with no detail. So it's kind of hard to see what you think about an ordinance or a proposed change if you have no way of getting to it. I poked around over the website trying to find those ordinances. I couldn't get them. I came down and asked information a few weeks ago, and they sent me to planning and upstairs. And a lady went in the back and had to look it up on the computer and print me a copy out, which seemed kind of laborious, you know. So I think, well, I don't know why that was done, but I think you might want to reconsider and provide some way you can at least go on the website and find these things and look at them. Thank you.
City manager, you want to?
Yes, sir. As council knows, we had to make rather drastic changes to our website to become ADA compliable. That's American Disabilities Act compliable, and this is one of the areas that.
Can we make a hard copy available to those?
Oh, certainly we can make hard copies available, but we can't hang it on the website anymore.
Yeah. Well, there are problems with ADA and things that we actually can't do because the technical ability isn't there. But if you would like it, just like a copy, just call the city manager's office and they'll make one up for you.
And Joe, if you want to, you can send the clerk an email and we'll send you a copy of it, but we just can't hang it in public access. Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was last time.
Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Vogel?
Just to clarify, so if citizens do want to have access, they can email, they don't have to come to City Hall, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Sure. Sorry. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on the petitions and requests?
There's my sign.
Here's your sign.
Good evening. My name is Stan Johnson. I've been a resident for Titusville about 47 years. And thank you for your dedication to come to serve our community. And unfortunately, I have been researching some issues and find that the city is guilty of some deception, fraud, missing records, and so forth. And I have criticized our city government. And I have this protest sign here that mentions fraud. It's a vicious and malicious act committed by our city manager and our mayor. On September, this began on February the 12th at that council meeting. On September the 4th, I sent you, city manager, an email describing my plans to ask you to respond with 3 possibilities regarding the possibility that I would ask you to resign. And that one is to produce the report that the city paid $70,000 to review my correspondence from 2012 to 2019. And the second one was reconciliation for your fraud and to seek the truth. And the third one is voluntarily terminate your council seat. Well, we're at the last council meeting on September 10th, is that you said that I would receive a copy of this report that had all this information about what this independent engineering organization has to write about my correspondence, which they didn't have, that was done without my knowledge. All this was done. So anyhow, it didn't come about. I never received it. So I'm asking you tonight to resign from the position of mayor for cause, and the cause has to do with this correspondence by engineers that you've said exists, but it's more like pixie dust and the tooth fairy. It doesn't exist, so I therefore request your resignation on the basis of fraud, deception, and dishonesty. So maybe you have some questions to ask me of me.
I see none.
Okay, well, I'll continue. Is that I've sent this to you. You will not get the $1,000 reward for finding that report, and nobody so far has gotten $1,000 for naming this independent engineering organization, and no one has got the $1,000 for, what was the third thing? Well, the missing report, the contract, and to name the independent engineering organization. So this is all fraud, and it's not good. It's really not good. So I'll be asking you again for the same thing. Thank you.
This is not a question, so don't come back up, please. But I did some research that the number of 70,000 was a round number, so don't look for it to be specifically. I've told you that twice already, but you keep using that number. You did receive the document. It was 230 pages, and you sent 38 pages back going through it. The document was not particularly on you. It was on a project or an area, and you have already read it and sent your comments back. So I see nothing further to do with it. Next, anyone else from petitions and requests? Next item, consent agenda.
Yes, sir, council. Does any council members want to pull any of the items that are A through M?
I don't see any lights.
Okay, we have 3 items that will be pulled. It's items E, F, and J. So with your permission, I'll go ahead and read A through M for the record.
Yes, sir.
Consent agenda item 8A, approve fiscal year 2019 budget carryover forward list. Consent agenda item 8B, approve the renewal of all lines of insurance coverage for FY 2020 at an estimated total premium of $751,545, which is an increase from last year's cost of $725,663, and authorize the city manager to put in place all necessary instruments for this renewal. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the use of vendor of record VOR for commodities shown on the attached list, subject to the appropriation of funds for the FY 2020, such as operational requirements and programs. Approve any changes to the VOR list resulting from competitive procurement actions conducted by other government agencies for the expired contracts being used by the city under a piggyback and/or cooperative purchasing programs. Approve the issuance of purchase orders and contract renewal options to the VOR. Delegate the authority to the city manager to award purchases exceeding the ordinance limits to the VOR, subject to the appropriation of funds for the FY 2020, such as operational requirements programs, and authorize the mayor to execute all contracts for the VOR exceeding $50,000, and authorize the city manager to execute all contracts with the VOR up to $50,000. Consent agenda item 8D, approve the transportation impact fee deferral and educational impact fee exemption contract for the Luna Trails multifamily development, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement upon receipt of all executable exhibits of the contract. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the successor collective bargaining agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police and the City of Titusville. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the successor collective bargaining agreement between Florida State Lodge, Fraternal Order of Police Incorporated, and the City of Titusville. Consent agenda item 8G, approve the award of contract to ABC Land Clearing and Development in the amount of $24,425 to demo and remove and dispose of 6 condemned structures, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8H, adopt resolution 49, 2019, supporting temporary closure of state roads for the Astronaut High School Homecoming Parade. Consent agenda item 8I, approve change order number 1 to contract CN 19B018 FY19 to the CBDG paving improvement to the Community Asphalt Corporation of Vero Beach, Florida, in the amount of $44,084.89 for the construction of paving improvements at various locations within the South Street target area, and authorize the mayor to execute the change order. Consent agenda item 8J, approve the award of contract subject to resolution of contract terms by the city manager and city attorney for OPEB actuarial services to Foster & Foster Incorporated in the amount of $10,900 for fiscal year 2020 and 4 optional renewal years of 2021 through 2024, totaling $43,800 for 5 years, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Consent agenda item 8K, approve the addition of grant writing services to the existing continuing consulting building envelope contract, execute agreement with Terracon Consultants Incorporated to write and submit federal brownfield grant, community-wide assessment grant up to $300,000 on behalf of the city of Titusville, and authorize the mayor to execute the amended agreement. Consent agenda item 8L, approve the amendment to the Welcome Center Memorandum of Understanding. And last, consent agenda item 8M, approve the attached budget amendment and award renewal for medical reinsurance coverage, subject to approval of the FY 2020 budget with Symetra to cover medical reinsurance costs at an estimated annual premium of $778,475.16 based on 533 employees. In addition, authorize the city manager to put in place any instruments necessary for this engagement. There is a resolution, sir, so after the cards, we will need a roll call vote. And your first card is item 8E.
Someone has a card on that? Yeah.
Yes, sir, we have cards for 8E,
Will you
F, and J.
Call the card, please.
Stan Johnston,
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. This is an important issue as I was watching Netflix. And this fellow whose parents are from India, Minaj, I believe his name is, he had a special, he's been a number of specials, but one of the specials is that about the police are very different in the laws that they are under than other citizens. And they are, and they have to be in some ways. So I want you to understand the adoption of this ordinance is actually adoption of laws. That the contract that you have for collective bargaining with unions is protection of police officers. Unfortunately, not only does it protect the good police officers, but it protects the bad police officers, good cop, bad cop. This is what was written very much in this, it's like a documentary that I watched. And a police officer was explaining it, and he's written several books on it. So police officers have very different laws than what we have, and they should have because of their position. I understand that. But I've had pages 145 and 146 of your agenda packet, which I have marked up. And in this particular case, I am against this, and I can explain to you some reasons I'm against it. On page 145, it has to do with employee disciplinary procedures. And let me read this to you. It says, all oral testimony given in an interview conducted by the assigned investigator shall be sworn testimony. But I'm going to say to you, but according to H below on the same page, is that the meeting to discuss resolutions is that this can be inadmissible. All this can be inadmissible in that particular meeting. On item F, I'll read item F to you, is if the chief of police approves the agreement, the consensus reached be implemented, and the investigation and grievance process is considered as complete. Now, understand is that this investigation and freeing of liability and something for the police officer is completed without having the aggrieved party or the victim present or going to court. This is like Rodney. So the third thing I'm reading to you is H. Let me read H to you. It says, nothing discussed at any meeting so held shall be binding upon either party until a final report is approved by the chief of police, and nothing discussed at the meeting shall be used against the employee if a consensus is not implemented. What this does is this is the person, let's say the bad cop, can have admission and destruction of evidence, and then what can happen is that it's all
Your time is
considered
up, sir.
moot. May I have more time on this?
I see
Okay,
you
thank you.
that motion.
Thank you. You should have more time, but you're not interested.
Yes, sir, the next card is 8F.
Please call that card.
Stan Johnston,
Okay. You know my name, Stan Johnston. Okay. I asked for time, and you didn't,
You have to stay to the item, please.
pardon?
You have to address the item you called.
Okay, would you,
called up on.
okay, I don't know why you're interrupting me, using my time, but this is a serious issue. And for example, what happened in Los Angeles after Rodney King was a very bad thing. Now, we've had some accusations of police brutality in our area. And so let me go on to page 146, which I expect is the same type of language. I'll read it to you. It says, once an employee, that's a police officer, has gone 5 years without disciplinary action for a minor violation, the records of prior disciplinary action shall not be used in progressive discipline. In other words, that, for example, whatever happens is that whatever his record is not only cannot be taken against him, it's destroyed. And this is what was on Netflix. It's destroyed, and in other words, for example, when it comes to time for disciplinary, they can't even consider these records after the 5 years. Next paragraph reads, says, once an employee has gone, now you're adopting these laws. By adoption of this, you're adopting these laws. I want you to understand that. I think Jolynn, maybe she understands it, maybe not. Pardon?
I understand.
Okay, there you go. Once an employee has gone 10 years, listen to 10 years, without disciplinary action for a major violation, the records of prior disciplinary action shall not be used in progressive discipline. Okay, in other words, the guy's been really bad for 10 years. Okay, so let's say he's accused of something really bad. What he does is he walks off and he resigns. 10 years later, he comes back to the same police department, and that records has been removed. So what we do is we're having an opening for bad police officers to continue in their employment. This is what I'm listening to on this Netflix program. So this is the legality of erasing records, and you can't stop it because you're approving it. So in other words, council, by accepting these union bargaining agreements, is that you're making laws. And I want you to understand this. And these laws can kick you in the seat because of for example, a bad cop is very hard to get rid of. And I think that if John Lau was here, I'm sure he'd agree with me. So I would like you to consider this and discuss it. What's going on? To understand is that you are adopting laws by adopting this thing that was on a consent item.
Your time is up, sir.
May I have more time? Okay. Obviously, you're not interested. Thank you.
Call the next item, please.
Item J, Stan Johnston.
Name and address for the record, sir.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue, resident of Titusville for 47 years, professional engineer for 43 years, professional land surveyor since 1980, educator, taught seven different engineering courses at Brevard Community College. So I'm looking at this award of contract for other employment benefits actuarial services. And I'm explaining to you in the 2018, January and February, there was considerable dispute that I hope that Sarah Stokel's interested in, but maybe not. But what happened is that I had questions for the actuary. I contacted him repeatedly about this subsidy. And I think this is the same organization, this services, maybe Foster and Foster or some other one. She's not here. So I was very disappointed with the explanation that the actuary gave on those meetings, and the absence of the actuary, and the absence of the actuary or the city of Titusville responding to many questions I had. And I understand, remember, this was the time in that our mayor was describing us in bankruptcy in February of 2018. The word was bankruptcy. 27 minutes of discussion by our council members at the end of the meeting, when I don't know that anybody was present at the meeting, but for 27 minutes, this council, except for Mr. Jordan, discussed the city's bankruptcy. However, a few months later, it just disappeared. The city's in great financial shape. So it seems like some nonsense is going on here that I'd like you to look into, and this actuary should be reconsidered. I'm questioning whether the city is doing the right thing by not answering questions. And this issue about bankruptcy, and we're talking about, my goodness, we're talking about making a $6 million parking garage, but we're almost on the verge of bankruptcy. So it's difficult to understand what the heck you guys are doing. So think it over, what you're doing, and think it over. And my sign back there is about fraud, and I have no idea, because after the meeting of September 10th, you said I was going to get the report, and I didn't. So let's have something here about these items that you intend to just go ahead and pass away and pass it. So thank you very much.
Mayor, this concludes the cards, and just as a reminder, we will need a roll call vote for
Yes, sir.
items A through M.
I need a motion?
Actually, before we do that, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
The idea of disciplinary proceeding is not to have, is basically between the officer and the police department. This is something that is typical, those negotiations as to what the punishment should be for a transgression. Those are typically not released until something happens, until they're accepted. This is something that's normal. And it isn't something that a victim comes in and talks about. A victim has other outlets. They have criminal charges, they have civil charges, but this is a matter of what type of discipline this officer is going to get. So to me, this doesn't bother me at all.
Thank you, ma'am. I will also point out that we have one lawyer on staff, and two lawyers, I'm sorry, on staff, and one lawyer on the council, and they review all of these things, and they don't see it quite the way that gentleman did. So, you have a motion then?
I think Mr. Jordan wants to make a motion.
Yes, sir. I see your light.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda item 8A through M.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, clerk.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next item, sir.
Yes, sir, we're to item 9A, and staff would like to table this item to October 8th, 2019. And after, hopefully you'll approve that, and then after we table that, we would like council to address P&Z's commission request to have a subject matter expert come before them to answer questions that they have.
Okay. We have a motion?
I move to table the public hearing for ordinance number 27-2019 to October 8th, 2019.
Second.
And before we continue, we do have a card for this item.
Well, it was tabled.
If this item is tabled, then we will take cards in this item because you're required to have public comment prior to taking action on an item. If you table it, you will be taking action at the next public hearing, and the card will be appropriate prior to you taking action.
Okay.
And again, this is for the public. Ordinance number 27, 2019, relating to retention in the area of critical concern.
We have a card?
So we're asking for a,
You have a motion
Card.
and a second, and Richard just explained that the card is not valid.
oh, okay, the card is not found. I thought he said-
Well,
That's not what
correct.
you
We
said.
won't be heard tonight. We will hear all cards at the meeting at which this is tabled
So,
prior to you taking action.
right, so the card is valid, but at the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We need a roll call vote. This is an ordinance. I guess. Clerk? No? It says ordinance. Oh, but it's for the next thing. Okay. All those, any discussion on the item? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign? Passes unanimously. Next item, please.
Yes, sir. We'd like council to address the P&Z Commission's request to have a subject matter expert attend their next meeting.
Okay. Go right ahead. I know you are. That's all right. I got your number. Go right ahead. Oh, I thought you were pushing yours. Oh, Vice Mayor.
I get to go. I just simply want to say that at the last meeting, we discussed this, I believe it was the last meeting, we discussed this, and no one was opposed to having the expert come in and answer questions. The concern that I think we had was we don't want to say yes to that till we know how much it was going to cost. So I think that once we didn't want to get the cart before the horse. So I want to kind of clarify that because I think perhaps there was some misunderstanding. So as a council, I think that I would like to see us move forward with allowing the Mr. Barnes, I guess it is, right, to come in and answer the questions that planning and zoning has. And I think the big hang-up, one of the big hang-ups was the cost. And once that's clarified to us, I think we would be prudent then to move forward and not before. So, and I will also say that I had made a motion or a comment at the last meeting that I would like to have seen, and I think we're past that now, but I would like to have seen a little more intercommunication between the planning and zoning and staff and allow staff to answer the questions that they have. And if they couldn't answer them, then we'd move forward. I had noted that, but again, I think at this point, all sides are on the same side, meaning let's have him come in and answer them and let's move forward and let's, try to get rid of our delays.
Member Nelson?
I agree with the Vice Mayor that we do need to move forward. I believe we have a price for the consultant to come in. Am I right, Ms. Bisaka? Mr. Saufer, somebody had a price?
I'll go ahead and answer.
I heard a price.
Yes, we do. I've spoken with Mr. Barnes, and he has estimated the cost to be approximately $1,400.
Okay.
And that would include his travel time to Titusville to present in person to the P&Z Commission.
And I understand he prefers doing it in person.
Yes, after we spoke, he did prefer to do that. In fact, he offered that he would even drive over for free if cost was a concern, because he felt that in person he would be best able to communicate the answers, as well as if there's any other follow-on questions, he would be there and be available to make sure that he conveyed and answered as best he could their questions.
Thank you. It's an important issue, and I think it's something that we need to know. I think there is some confusion because the report was labeled as being for Brookshire, but it's really an ordinance. It's not about Brookshire. And so I have no problems with talking to the consultant, but I would like to see him focus on the ordinance and not Brookshire. Because the question to me, and I had talked to Mr. Severs at one point, and the question was, are these areas going to be able to filter the water? Is that correct? Is the water going to be able to percolate down? Thank you. They didn't teach. I didn't have to take science. So I don't want to get really far afield on some of the other potential questions, because this really isn't about Brookshire. The question is, what do we do to make sure that we're getting the aquifers recharged? So I would say approve it, but put some limits on it.
Member Jordan?
Yeah, my concern actually is the process that we use to get to this point. It kind of bothers me. I think this is kind of unprecedented when you actually had a consultant and then the committee asked for the consultant to come back to answer questions. I would have assumed that if you had a consultant who's going to do a report, that he would be available to come back or come to a meeting and discuss it with the committee. So I'm a little concerned about that. So every time there is a committee who actually is going to get a report, we're going to have the committee asking the council, can they have more time with this? So I think we need to look at the process to make sure we don't have this happen again.
Point of order. Mr. Broom, you said
Sir, you can't talk from the audience without being recognized. You know better than that.
well, you're doing something.
You're disturbing this meeting, sir.
Is it illegal what you're doing?
I know you're an expert attorney too. Ma'am, if he says anything else. Yes. Okay. Do not start talking from the back again.
Come on. What's your point, Mr. Johnston?
Turn on the mic, please. Thank you.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
You recently approached me and said that I should at times approach you if I had a special problem. In this particular case, Is this agenda item has been tabled?
What we're discussing is the procedure to have an expert go to the plan and zoning meeting. We are not discussing the agenda item. This is an administrative issue of coordinating our consultant to go to the P&Z meeting. We are not discussing the agenda item.
It sounds like to me you're discussing.
No,
it
they're
very much.
clarifying what he's going to P&Z, what agenda item he's going there for. We are not discussing the agenda item.
It sounds like to me you're discussing the agenda item even though it's been tabled.
No,
And that would be-
it's an administrative discussion about sending and paying the cost for the consultant to go to P&Z.
Member Jordan, are you?
Yeah, I just want us to have a discussion about that. Is this something is this the process that we're going to have where we have a committee who gets a report and they don't get the consultant back, that they're going to come to us and ask for permission to have them back? I just think it should be part of the process of delivering the report, in my mind. Nobody wants to say anything. What does staff think?
I think, City Attorney, do you want to address his questions, or?
I understand his comments. I don't think it's for council to vote on that tonight. He's making his comments known for future processes. This report wasn't developed to address this ordinance. This was developed for staff as they were working through a subdivision. But some of those concepts are what we looked at when we created the ordinance. So that's why they're bringing it back. The report wasn't created as part of creating this ordinance. That's why the report discussed Brookshire, but Brookshire is not on the agenda either. It's just part of that report had to do with locating retention ponds above 25 MSL and some of those concepts. And that's what the ordinance only addresses, is location of retention ponds, not reclaimed water, not Brookshire, not. So when you authorized Mr. Barnes, and what you're doing now is authorizing him to go to P&Z, it is to discuss that ordinance, and the ordinance is specific to location of retention ponds in the ACC.
And am I correct to assume that means we won't be discussing any of the ancillary items that are not?
You will be discussing the proposed ordinance in front of you, which is location of retention ponds in the ACC.
And not anything?
And that's what's been tabled. I want to clarify, Johnson, that's what we will discuss at your next meeting.
Okay.
The only discussion we're having now is authorizing Mr. Barnes to go to the P&Z meeting.
I understand. I just want
Yes,
to
sir.
make it clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Member Jordan, anything else? I think I just dropped somebody off accidentally, but Member Stokel, that wasn't me. I pushed it once and somebody else pushed something else.
It's okay. Yeah, I agree. I think we should move forward, but to Member Jordan's point, I'm kind of with him. I feel like if we have a contract with somebody to provide services, I feel like we should be able to ask questions and them answer. So I'm not really sure why we're having to pay $1,400 personally, but I feel like it's needed, but I don't know if there's something we can do in the future where if we have questions that are relevant to the topic or their report they're given, I don't know, I just don't, it's confusing to me, I guess.
I'm going to let the attorney explain it to you.
No, that's fine. The reason I hit my button is, you're right, this item's been tabled. We've had a lot of discussion about Mr. Barnes going and the spending of the money. I'm inclined in abundance of caution. If Mr. Johnston wants to specifically address the expenditure of funds and have Mr. Barnes there and make a comment on that, I would suggest we can hear the comment, but it has to be related only to that. We are not addressing the agenda item tonight. That's been tabled. I'll leave it up to the mayor, but abundance of caution, if we are going to make that decision, I would welcome a public comment on the expenditure of funds. But it has to relate specifically to that.
You may come forward. You have 3 minutes, sir. Put the light on, please.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. I have sent to you and to staff my examination of this ordinance. And on a scale from 0 to 10 on some imaginary nonsense meter, I would put it as a 10. It makes absolute no sense. And I wish you could have, if possible, you could get a professional engineer to sign that this is okay. I know that Mr. Stauffer, he's a professional engineer. He's been asked to review it, and him and KB on the P&Z meeting said that they weren't able to answer all of Mr. Seaver's questions. And the questions I have in my examination is that this is nonsense, and that what it will lead to is, for example, is it something that can't be
That
done?
doesn't sound like a question, sir. That sounds like a statement.
I don't know what you're saying, but anyhow, in other words, I think that Mr. Barnes should pay you because this ordinance is nonsense. And I want to say again is that water flows downhill. If you have, it doesn't happen in Brookshire, but if you have a subdivision that is like Brookshire, but it connects on a road that is below 25 feet, you have to, by ordinances, you have to treat that water. And the ordinance says that all required retention ponds must be above the 25-foot level. That's saying is that what you have to do is you're going to have to pump stormwater in order to make this ordinance work. Again, I'm saying to you, water flows downhill. And this isn't a violation of gravity, this ordinance, unless you pump it, unless you pump stormwater. And I'd be glad to sign and seal it sometime, but I would like to, Mr. Barnes or somebody. As far as I know, Mr. Barnes is never an engineer of record. I have been the engineer of record of over 12 subdivisions in the Titusville area, numerous site plans. And as for my experience, is that this is absolute nonsense. So I'm asking you to not pay Mr. Barnes any more money. No staff that have done subdivision work, drainage work in that area. And I know Mr. Barnes, he hasn't. He can't sign and seal subdivisions have to do with drainage. So if you can get an engineer, maybe Mr. Stauffer, maybe he'll say it's okay. He's already looked at it. It's nonsense. A 10. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I would agree with Member Jordan in that I would like to think that when we have an expert come in or a contractor come in and is dealing with something with the P&Z or anyone else, that when they leave, we're done. And all the questions have been asked and we've got to make a decision. I also would hope not to get caught up in a precedence of, a week later, 2 weeks later, we bring in for 30 more questions. However, I think where we're at now is that this is obviously kind of a sticking point, and I think that these questions need to be answered. I will hope, as Member Nelson noted, that the questions will deal more with a future ordinance and the future of ordinances in this area as opposed to Brookshire and previous developments. I understand Brookshire is pertinent because a lot has happened that relates to this, and I get that. But I don't want us to bring somebody in for $1,400 and we talk about an event that's already happened and has already been approved and has already moved forward, no matter how we feel about it. Now, that being said, I hope that we can move forward, bring in Mr. Barnes, get the questions asked that need to be asked. With all due respect to all involved, I just hope we can all get together on this and move forward because we seem like we've bounced this ball plenty of times.
Member Jordan.
Yeah, 2 questions. First of all, what was the original contract worth?
I believe it's approximately $3,600.
So it's $3,600, and now we're going to pay him another $1,400 to come and answer questions. To Vice Mayor Diesel's point, though, I think we've got a problem because we gathered 30 questions, specifically really from one person, and you're asking that they focus on a certain thing, but those 30 questions was all over the place, if I remember right. So I hear what you're saying, I agree with you, but I don't see how that's gonna happen. We're gonna bring him back for $1,400, and is there a time limit? He's only gonna be here for 4 hours, 3 hours, or he's just gonna be here for the duration?
One of the things that I spoke with Mr. Barnes about is that I would call him tomorrow after we receive direction from council. And my hope is that with the limits and the expectations provided by council, that will reduce his level of effort. I kind of included the 1,400 as a worst-case scenario. So I will talk to him about that and see if that doesn't change his price now that we have some more bounds. And it sounds like some of the 30 questions will not be considered associated now that we have the limits described to us exactly what council is looking for.
Okay, just so we don't have some frustration from P and Z, I would suggest that you have a conversation with them too before you bring them over. If they find out they're only going to be able to answer 10 of the 30 questions, there's going to be a problem for sure. So.
City Attorney, does that cause any issues?
Well, there's not an opportunity to talk to planning and zoning before their meeting. But I think, and I agree, I think council has said if we're going to bring Mr. Barnes in, he needs to be there since we're paying for his time, to use his time efficiently and to address the ordinance, which is location of the retention ponds. Now, some of the questions which mention the subdivision probably could be asked more in a general way that would be relevant to the retention ponds as opposed to focusing on what may have happened previously. But that would be Mr. Barnes, he's the expert. I'm not an engineer, but there's just not an opportunity to go back to them. I think when we bring him in, if you decide that that's appropriate, is as P&Z looks at the ordinance and asks questions, staff and Mr. Barnes will probably be able to help them understand what is relevant to the ordinance and what in his analysis is appropriate to consider when looking at location of retention ponds. I think that's the point, is planning and zoning wanted to be able to understand the issue. And you're providing him to help them understand the issue. And partly I'm going to rely on him helping us understand what is relevant to that discussion.
Okay, we have already voted on the motion, so is there anything else we need to address on this, City Attorney?
Yes, sir. I think what you did is you tabled the item.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably need a motion to address Mr. Barnes.
Okay, counsel?
Well, move to permit Mr. Barnes to come over and address planning and zoning regarding the ordinance up to an amount of $1,400.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Next item, please, sir.
Yes, Mayor. The next item is ordinance number 35, 2019, extension of plant nursery pilot program. I'll read the ordinance at this time. Ordinance number 35, 2019, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending ordinance number 37, 2018, relating to extension and conditions of the pilot program for plant nurseries and community commercial CC zoning, specifically amending Chapter 28 zoning, Section 28-215 plant nursery of the land development regulations, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the land development regulations.
The Planning and Zoning Commission considered the ordinance on September 17, 2019, recommended approval 5-0. The Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended that this program become part of the land development regulations permanently. Ordinance number 37, 2018, creating a plant nursery pilot program was adopted on August 28, 2018, and will sunset on September 28, 2019, unless otherwise extended by City Council. On June 11, 2019, Council discussed extending the pilot program and approved advisability to extend the pilot program an additional 12 months until September 28, 2020. This is your second reading of ordinance number 35, 2019.
Okay, are there any cards on this?
Yes, sir. 4 cards. The first is Stan Johnston.
I'm requesting to speak after Patricia speaks. Can you say something, Patricia?
Good evening. My name is Patricia Tooming. I'm with the
Ma'am,
Plant
could you
Park.
pull the microphone a little bit down toward you? Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm Patricia Tooming, 1780 Gulfview Drive. I'm with the Plant Park. And so I have something written up because I'm not real good at public speaking, apparently. So as the city has the document of 37/2019 written, these approval council meetings on planning and zoning meetings will go on into infinity. There seems to be no end date. Because of this, every year of uncertainty, I can't plan for short-term or long-term plans or goals. Do I plant? Do I buy product? At this stage, my goals can only be at best at 3-month intervals, and everything comes to a halt in July. No planting, no orders, no progress, no growth. The plant park is at a standstill until all of these meetings and decisions are made. Until then, I am at a crossroads. Do I plan to pack up and move on, or do I continue as usual? I cannot find anywhere the description and time frame of a pilot program in the city website. The pilot program is not defined. Where is the city's definition of the pilot program? Every definition of the pilot program mirrors the definition of probationary period. Both terms indicate a beginning and an end. Submitted on September 19th of 2019, per Ordinance 35/2019, Section 1, subsection M, and Section 2, in its description, alludes to every year a continuation by council, board, and planning and zoning boards to be required for the plant park to remain in business and keep the plant park tied up in red tape forever, year after year. Because of the ongoing uncertainty, starting in July, seasonal items must be pre-ordered months in advance. To give you an example, this year the plant park will not have poinsettias or Christmas cactus because I still don't know if I will be in business in October. What would I do with 100 seasonal plants for Christmas? I have a bill lying in wait for my city tax certificate. Should I pay that? Please consider rewording the ordinance to include an end date to the pilot probation program to reduce unneeded disruption to the goals of the plant park with unnecessary disruption and delays.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? I'll just say, ma'am, that I think what we're doing, I know what we're doing tonight is either going to extend it a year or not extend it a year. So we'll see, or allow it permanently. There is a third
Okay.
choice.
Well, and
But
that's
it's
been-
not going to go on forever.
Okay, well, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because the wording here. So I'm not saying that you're not. I'm just bringing up the wording so that we can get it cleared up.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I know where my life is going and where my business is going.
I heard you, ma'am. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
really confusing at this point.
I understand, and
Okay.
I think, I don't blame you for what you said or anything. I think you're correct, but I think we will make one of those choices tonight, either, whatever it is, you will know tonight.
Fantastic. Did
Yes,
anybody have
ma'am.
any questions?
Did you have any questions, or any questions?
I did. I was going to wait. Ms. Toomey, if you weren't there, is there a different place that you could go?
I don't want to go anyplace else.
It's working well there?
I'm doing well there. The community has welcomed me. I'm working with the community. Community is working with me. They're coming in. I'm having regular customers and repeat customers. So they're getting to know where I'm at, and things are going, I feel it's going very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
ma'am.
Thank you.
I see no other lights. Thank you, ma'am.
Is that it?
Next card, please.
Mr. Johnston, did you want to speak after Ms. Toomey?
I could, or I could speak after the next person. If there's another card,
We have two other cards.
I think I should speak after them. I'm for it.
Joseph, is this Joseph Hill?
Joe Hill, 4490 Browning, Titusville. I really don't see a reason why commercial can't have grow plants. I always felt that way, and I would recommend that you guys make this permanent. I mean, I wanted to raise plants. I have some community commercial property, and I wanted to raise plants there, but it doesn't meet the code because it's community commercial. So I'm all for her getting this. She's came up here, and you were nice enough to do the pilot program. I was under the assumption it was going to be 6 months or a year. Things worked out, make it permanent, and then this time it was worded another 12-month extension. So I'm here to recommend that you make this a permanent change to our ordinances to allow the growing of plants and selling of plants in community commercial zoning.
The issue, sir, if I can clarify a little bit, wasn't the growing plants as much as having facilities that are required. A bathroom situation and so forth, they are not on that property and they are required. So that was the real issue. That's why we went to the, what we did.
But you still can't have a nursery and a community commercial except for this pilot program.
Depends on tonight.
So that's, I think it should be.
I understand, sir. I just want to tell you there was more issues than just the growing of plants on it. So, all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next card, please.
Hello, my name is Amanda Milligan. I'm at 5640 Stanford in Mims. And I just wanted to say that the relationship that Patty has formed with the community has been wonderful. I'm involved in a number of groups which are online, but we also do things to help the community, and she's always there with lending her hand, her knowledge, and donations of some incredible plants that we would not otherwise have access to. She's a cheerleader for so many people. She really has encouraged a lot of folks to think about changing their gardening style so that our lagoon is even safer. And we can't do enough for that. And we all know that impact. The pollinator plants that she provides, both host plants and nectar plants for the different pollinators, is crucial. And people are really starting to take that and run with that, and it's really wonderful. Her ability to encourage families, we have a lot of young families that seem to be more involved in growing their own food and trying to seek out a lifestyle for themselves that benefits both themselves and the community. So I wholeheartedly would like to see her become permanent. And I think it makes it wonderful for the community too to have more competition. If this works out for this individual, we should be able to see some more incredible nurseries that bring more diversity to our area. Because sometimes you're looking for something very special and you find one special person who can do it. And it would be wonderful if we could just bring that commerce to a higher level. And she's done a wonderful job, and I hope you have her continue, and others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Next card, please, clerk.
Stan Johnston.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. So I'm asking if I'll make some mistakes, is that Patricia will correct me. But this business is not a big money business. It's a low profit. And she's looking, and the thing is that she's explaining to you, and so is Joe, that should the pilot program expire, then she loses her business. She can lose a lot of money that she's ordered and planning and so forth, but she's planning to try to live in this community. And it's not a big profit that she's making at all. So with that in mind is that I'm not sure what can be done to make this a permanent motion in some way, whether there's a possibility of grandfathering, because even before she was operating, it was operated, so I'm thinking, I don't know what might be a solution, whether you can grandfather her in a special case and the property and the way it's been used so that it can be used that way in the future, without, because that's the way it was. And it was a nice business before she came in there. So that's one possibility. And maybe there's a possibility of of making it permanent or of revising the ordinance so it doesn't have these stipulations that a restroom needs to be on site. I don't think when you have Christmas trees, for example, when you sell Christmas trees, you don't have to have a restroom. Maybe you do in Titusville, but not in the county. So if I've said something in error, I certainly would like to be corrected.
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Busaka, do you have any comments on this that you'd like to make?
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions of Ms. Busaka? I guess there is. Member Nelson?
Yes. Ms. Busaka, is it possible, I think Ms. Toomey had extraordinary circumstances. She had a bathroom there that she could use. She had parking there she could use. She had a building there that I'm assuming if she needed to, she would be able to use. So where there were a lot of things that she could do that maybe other people couldn't do. So it's not that I want to see the ordinance totally changed, but I'm wondering if we could make a circumstance where people can have nurseries in community commercial areas with very tight restrictions, so that we are still paying attention to the code. Is that possible?
I'm not quite sure what paying attention to the code means.
We're still following it, more or
Well,
less.
if you mean the code that's here or the code that every other business has to follow?
The code that is here, and that there is access to all these things
Then
that
that's
other
what the
business.
current pilot program language would do. And in order to make this permanent, if you like all of these conditions, I believe that we would have to re-advertise the ordinance. I would not suggest that we table this because this pilot program is going to expire the
Correct.
28th. So if you want to make this a permanent program in which people can have access to facilities only through lease agreements and that kind of thing, then these conditions are currently been created, and we would have to amend the ordinance to eliminate the pilot program. So this ordinance could be adopted, and then council could provide us advisability to do otherwise, to amend this so that these are permanent conditions, and that anyone in community commercial would have the opportunity to have a nursery without the other, as I said, the other requirements that other commercial buildings have. Now, when someone comes to staff, I want to tell you that when someone comes to staff and says, why is it that nurseries don't have to have all these things that tire stores have to have, or any other type, then I expect that you're going to have other people coming up saying, I'm not being treated fairly because I'm a business. For instance, let's just say that the only thing they're selling is flowers. How do I explain to a florist that they have to have specific building and these other people don't? Or that's the question that's going to be the first time that code enforcement goes out and says to someone, you don't have what it takes to do a business. You have to do this, this, and this. The question's going to be, and we're going to say, council can make that call. We can't, because this was, and tell you the truth, it's not clear to me why a nursery doesn't have to meet the requirements that every other business has to meet. But there may be rationale for that. And if you have that rationale, if you shared it with staff, that would be really helpful, because I promise you that question is coming.
I think I look at it differently. If I go into a 7-Eleven, if I go into a tire store where I'm going to be there for 30 minutes or an hour, I expect certain things to be there. Whereas when I'm going in to buy a tomato plant, I'm not going in to see if there's a bathroom there.
Yes, ma'am, but if you're going into Ace Hardware or Home Depot, you can also be going in just to buy a plant. Because they do have plants.
Correct.
And they do have all those other things. So do we now tell them that they don't need all these other things because?
Peggy, I've never managed to make it into Home Depot or Lowe's and just buy a plant. I think that's a problem.
I'm just telling you, this is the reality of what this is going to do.
Okay.
So, but this is not my decision. This is something that we at staff can explain to the best of our ability, but just plan to see other people who want to sell other things to come in and say the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't the fact that she has access to facilities a mitigating factor?
I think that's your decision.
Okay. Sure, go right ahead. But please be brief because you will get another chance. You want to wait? Now, you get another chance at the end because you're the applicant.
This is, I just want to clarify, this is a legislative, this is not quasi judicial, she's not an applicant. This
Oh,
is
okay.
council
All right.
acting in a legislative capacity. You certainly can let her speak as long as you like. I just want to clarify that it's not a rebuttal situation.
In that case, go right ahead.
Okay, so in my lease that I had to submit to the city per the requirements of the city, in there, if I don't have access to a bathroom or to parking facilities, then my lease ends and the city is telling me I have to leave the property within 10 days. So I actually have met the requirements per the ordinance, how it's written, and per what the city wants. It's just that the two properties are zoned differently, but they are adjacent to one another, so the facilities are available.
Okay.
And they're fairly close together, correct?
Right next to
They're right next to one
They're
another.
right next to each other.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Member Jordan?
All right, thanks. I actually looked at this because I didn't know anything about this before I got on council. And I will tell you, I did ask the question about, have you followed all the rules? And the answer was yes, you follow all the rules. As an entrepreneur myself, of course, I applaud you for even stepping out to do something like this. The only concern I have, because I want you to be successful, so don't get alarmed by what I'm saying. I'm trying to find a way where we can make this work, okay? That's my preamble. If this was, I'm not asking you a question, I'm going to ask you a question. If this was my property, this is keeping it running property, right? If he wanted to do exactly what Ms. Toomey did, would he be able to do that on his property?
Right now, anyone in community commercial can come in for this pilot program as long as they meet all the requirements.
Okay, because community commercial does not allow you to do this if it wasn't for this pilot program.
Correct.
Correct?
Now,
Okay. So,
Excuse me if I could. I think that the issue here is not the sale of the, not retail of a nursery. That is entirely consistent with community commercial. I think the issue is the lack of site planning and facilities and electricity and a building that's required for, to my knowledge, every other permanent business in the city.
okay, but with this pilot program, there were requirements that she had to follow in order for her to do this.
Yes.
Right? And there were restrictions, like if she didn't have lights, they're dusk to dawn and all of this.
Yes,
And if
sir.
she had to be 25 square feet and all that good stuff. So there were requirements that allowed her to do this in the pilot program. And a pilot program is usually put together to see if it'll work.
Yes, sir.
And apparently, from what I've gathered, it worked, right? Now the question to us is, do we want to continue this, not as a pilot program, because she's right, she's got seasonal things, she needs to buy things, and as a business person, you know, and she's not making a lot of money, but she's making money, you want to make sure she's successful. So my question to you then is, should we ask you for an advisability to come up with something that will work? Now, I do have a concern, and that is because I'm a business owner, I have liability insurance. And my first question was, do you have liability insurance? You do have liability insurance. So that's all. It was not a requirement of this pilot program for
That's
her
correct.
to have liability insurance.
In fact, and I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of any requirement that the city has for insurance on any business.
It's personal insurance.
Is that right? Okay. But to me, one of the concerns I had was she was on someone else's property. If something happened, then of course, you could be done. So back to my question, does it make sense for us somehow to allow her to continue with what she's doing and come up with some type of ordinance, if you will, that will allow this to occur?
Well, if you feel that this has been successful and that the conditions that are shown here have seemed to address the issues that could have come up, then I think that we have sufficient conditions. If this council feels like there has somehow been complaints, which to my knowledge, and I've talked to code enforcement, has not been an issue in this, but maybe someone else has heard complaints that you need to address with these conditions, then we could create additional conditions. But in the year that this has been here, we have not received, to my knowledge, code enforcement has not received any complaints or had any issues on this.
Okay, so to me, if we had the forethought to be a good steward for the citizens here, and we say, let's go with this pilot program, my assumption is we wanted it to work. And it was really going to be based on what she did if it didn't work. But apparently everything has occurred like we wanted it to happen. So the only way you could deny her permanency, if that's a word, would be if she did not follow the rules for the year that she's been doing it. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. I say that.
Okay, great.
Sense,
Then
yeah.
yes, sir, it
So-
absolutely makes sense. What I'd like, if you would like
Yeah.
to, if council would like to make this permanent, then they should direct staff to go back. They should adopt this ordinance this evening so that Ms. Tooming does not have any more uncertainty as far as what happens on September 29th.
Okay.
That you should direct staff to advertise another ordinance, and basically it will be removing paragraph M on page 499, which relates to the pilot program.
All right.
And section 2 of the ordinance that deals with sunset provisions. Now, we would have to look at, we'd also have to look at L, because it says during the pilot program, no more than one sign with the maximum size shall be permitted, and that it would not be permanent. So that would probably, if this is a permanent business, I'm assuming that we would also want to see allow them to have a permanent sign.
Right.
Other than that, I believe that we probably have the conditions in place, and generating the ordinance would be very quick. We could get it done. It would take some time to advertise, but it
Right.
wouldn't take us long to get this ordinance put together.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at, but I'm really doing this with my heart instead of probably my head. So I need to understand, and I heard what you said, every other business, and I know there are requirements that we have when we open up a business. And we're basically saying, I guess there's two major things: parking, which I really don't have a big problem with, and the bathroom.
Electricity.
Oh, electricity. You don't have electricity there?
No need for electricity, because I don't have any customers there during nighttime hours. We're done at dusk, long before dusk. I want to go home. I'm a one-man band. I'm open from 9 to 5. That's it, Monday through Friday, 9 to 1 on Saturday. Those are the business hours of Keep 'em Running, and those are the business hours I have.
All right, so if we do this, it's only going to be for plants, right?
As it stands right now, should you just say that limiting it to nurseries, that you like the conditions, you feel that they have been successful over the last year, and the only thing that we're doing is taking the pilot program and making it permanent, then I would not suggest changing these. I don't believe I would. I think that we would have to address the sign issue.
Okay, if we say specifically for plant nursery, then there can't be someone who wants to open up a flea market without electricity and parking and all of that. That's
Well,
where I'm getting to.
It just depends, yes, that is what we would do, but I fully expect that the flea market people are watching tonight, and they'll be back next week.
Okay.
And then council can decide if they want to continue those type of activities, or whether this is the one and only type of activity that can be under these conditions.
And that's where I am. This is the only place. We did the pilot, it worked, let's go ahead and do that. Now, someone may come up and say, hey, I want to do a flea market, and let's make it a pilot, and then, of course, we have to deal with it then, right?
We don't have to do it.
We don't have to do it, for sure. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Member Stokel.
Thank you. Peggy, just to clarify, so if somebody wanted to do a plant nursery right now in community commercial, they could, not under the pilot program, just a plant nursery with bathrooms, with parking, or?
No, not if they can do retail.
Okay.
But if you have a nursery license, which is what Ms. Tooming has, then plant nurseries are limited, and they are not currently permitted except as a pilot program in community commercial.
Okay,
That's how
what I
we
was-
got where we are.
Okay.
Because it says, right now, they're permitted in M1, in DMU Midtown, and in RMU 500.
Okay.
And that's why we have this pilot program now, because it's not permitted. But if you wanted to say community commercial is permitted, that's how you become permanent, then that's what the changes that could be made in an ordinance.
In your opinion, should somebody have parking, bathrooms, electricity, those things, would you see any concern with having a nursery in the CC zoning?
No, ma'am, it's not the retail activity that's a concern to me.
Because, well, I guess to address Joe when he was speaking, saying, hey, if I wanted to do, open up a nursery and I had my proper things, not with the pilot program, I would want a citizen to be able to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. That's
kind of, I guess, the direction I would like to go in. I'm not really fond of all of these, no bathroom, and to your point, I would like to extend the pilot program, understanding this is a very unique situation, but I'm a little hesitant opening that up for that to be the norm, I guess.
Then I promise I will stop. But there is no place else in the city where stabilized parking is permitted. It has to be paved. And the reason for that is because there are oils that come off of cars,
Right.
and you want to put them into a retention area. You don't want them to drip into the groundwater. In fact, when we did outdoor storage, we required that if people were going to do outdoor storage and put vehicles, that they have a paved parking. So this would be unique on a lot of levels.
Right. Okay, so I guess where I'm at, I'd like to extend it for another year and have some time to kind of figure out what would be best for somebody in Ms. Tooming's situation while also protecting the city, and have clarification and guidance so we're not just spot zoning, in my opinion, honestly. I would like to take some time to look at it, to go over some of the things Peggy's mentioning, to make sure if we do make this a permanent thing that we are protecting ourselves as a city, but also allowing people to do business here that want to open up business. So that's where I'm at.
Ms. Fusaka, would it change anything if we made a conditional use out of this for CC?
It would require a public hearing, but I don't know what other conditions that I would recommend other than the ones that we've already put in.
No, I'm saying as a conditional use on it so that it couldn't be brought in other zonings arbitrarily, the way.
Well, right now, if, you could say it's a conditional use in CC, but doesn't get it into any other zoning. That just says you have to go through a public hearing process to go to community commercial. And again, I can't think of any other
But we
conditions.
could approve this one, and if another one comes in that isn't of this type or on CC, then, you know, you mentioned it might get on several other types of zonings.
Well, it's currently permitted in several other types of zonings, but should, for instance, council want to put it in regional commercial or office professional, or there's lots of different zonings that also allows some retail. Regional commercial is one of those.
Yeah, but we wouldn't want to do that. We'd want to say no at that point.
Well,
I'm just saying, does that limit it somewhat to community commercial?
well, it can be limited to community commercial without making it a conditional use permit. The only point of a conditional use permit is that you want to review the conditions so that you can go through the public hearing rather than saying to staff, we have set forth conditions that if you meet them administratively, you can have it approved.
Okay. Member Diesel, Vice Mayor Diesel, I'm sorry.
That's all right. When you speak sixth, you can only be so profound. So I'll just kind of summarize where I think I'm at and where we're at. And I want to kind of remind you, because you did talk about a little bit about, well, you've got to be able to know what's coming. But this is just the first year of the program. So it's not as though we've put you through this year after year. What I want to point out is we made this pilot program, as I hope you recall, because we wanted to support you. We really were, and Ms. Busaka as well, I think we were really trying to be creative to find a way to support you, and we came up with a pilot program to do so. And I think I can say we want this to work. This isn't one of those things where we're trying to find a way to shoot it down. We're trying to find a way to make it work. I see your place daily. I live down in that area. I think I said it last time, and I drive by and always looks good. You're always out there moving around, and a lot of people, it looks like a very happy place to be. I think it does the roadway well. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. I can't think of anything except, wow, it's really nice. And when I go by, I always think, gosh, I hope we can make this work. I hope we can make this work. I have added some landscaping out. Absolutely. Absolutely. I shake my head and say, wow, she's really done it up. It looks great. Obviously, Ms. Busaka is kind of between a rock and a hard place, because it's my feeling that when we went through this, she was the one who had a lot to do with making this work, and she wants to make this work. But there is a consistency and ordinance problem, that can be a concern. And it's always that, well, if I do this for you, what about the next one that comes along? And that comes from 35 years in education. I make an exception here for Johnny, and then I've got 12 other kids saying, well, hey, you did it for him. What about me? I'm not saying that's going to keep me from wanting to move forward with you, because I think that we can make this work, and you are very unique. And I kind of like what the mayor just said about the CUP. I think that that may allow us to go case by case.
Sure.
And I thought that was an excellent thought. In my case, I kind of agree with Member Stokel here. At the very least tonight, I want to extend the pilot program. At the very least, I want to get you moving forward.
Yeah.
But I also have some concerns that I'd kind of probably like to extend the program another year and give everybody some time to see what we can do to make this more permanent. But bottom line is, we support you.
Oh, no, I understand that. My problem with the wording is that it doesn't seem like the pilot program in the wording ever ends. It just continues on for 8, 9, 10, 12 years. I would have to do these.
Right, but in this case, it's only been one.
No, I understand.
So if you stand up there next year, you can say, gosh, it's been 2 years. And if you're here in 4 years, we'll say, that's too long.
No, but try to understand is when I opened up the catalog for poinsettias and I wanted to order poinsettias, and I said, but I don't know if I'm going to be here in October. I can't order poinsettias.
And I get that, but that's part of your side of things with the struggle of the pilot program.
Sure.
Because it could have been a year ago where we just said, we just can't do this. It just doesn't fit. Sorry about your luck. But nobody here wanted to do that.
No, I understand that.
And so you're having a little struggle with what to order, when to order, and I get that. And I hope this doesn't go on forever, but I think that Ms. Busaka certainly has some, I don't know that it would happen with the tire person or whatever, but certainly there's going to be some people out there, the flea market people are watching saying, well, gosh, she doesn't have electricity and she does, we can do this too. We'll just go from 9 to 5 and we'll be fine. So I can see both sides of it. And because of that, I want to make sure we move forward with the pilot program for you. I don't want to see you come to a halt, but I think there might need to be some more thought.
Member Nelson.
I don't know. This is just sort of my thought. So if Runabout said to Miss Toomey, we want to have a plant nursery out there, we want you to run it, we're going to do a contract with you, you run our plant nursery, would that be acceptable?
Right now, because that property that is zoned community commercial, it is not permitted in community, a plant nursery is not permitted in community commercial, so the code
Okay.
has to be amended if that's what you want to do. But let me explain what that would mean. There would have to be additional parking, probably, because a nursery is going to generate a certain amount of parking spaces. Right now, there's been no site plan for this, so I can't tell you that there is adequate parking based on the parking standards. It's certainly possible that there is, but I don't know that because that hasn't been reviewed. Those are the things that we review when we do site plans. No site plan was required for this project.
Okay.
The only thing that was required was a dimensional sketch.
Okay.
So we didn't go through all those questions.
That answers my question. Okay, thanks.
Member Jordan.
Yeah. You mentioned something that caught my ear, and you said that you don't know of any retail property, where you don't have a hardscape for a parking space. But I'm thinking about where model homes are. That's all they have is they've got straw down or mulch down, and they're parking right in.
A model home is not considered retail, it's a residential, and it'll be made into a regular house. So we don't consider that retail.
Even though they are parking, they actually
Correct.
have a designated parking space, so,
Correct.
okay.
Also, I don't believe there's anybody parking on a piece of property that's not paved. In this
What?
instance, because the way that the access is there's no access off of Cheney. The access is off the side street.
Side street, right.
So I think that in this instance, there is not an issue of people parking on a stabilized surface, but it is permitted here. So the next person who comes in and wants to do this may find a very different situation and may indeed, under the current code, be allowed to have the non-stabilized parking.
Okay, so I guess where we are, because I'm in agreement with what I just heard after I spoke, even though I think I was right, is that we should go for another year with this and give staff enough time to look at this thing and see how we can make it work, because, we need to have standards for sure, right? And we need to go forward and do the right thing for sure, so.
Ma'am, you can't do it. You spoke and you're out there. I did, however, tell you, Ms. Toomey, that I would give you another chance to come up and talk. I will do that at this point.
Okay, so the parking seems to be a consideration. There is no parking out in the field. Everybody parks in the parking lot in front of Keep 'em Running. So there's no oil on the ground. There's none of those things going on. Not for my customers anyway. So shouldn't be a concern. But if there's anything else, I'll address those questions.
I see no other questions, ma'am.
Okay.
What's your pleasure?
I would still move to adopt ordinance number 35-2019 extending the plant nursery pilot program.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, do we need to put in that motion extend for one more year? 'Cause I don't think we put a time on that.
I think that's in the ordinance.
The ordinance is currently 12 months.
Okay, and I understand that. I just, in the motion, it just said extended. I just want to make sure we don't mess that up.
One other question, we're extending it, but we need staff to be doing something, right? So provide advisability. Okay, thanks.
Okay, it is an ordinance, so I guess we do have a roll call vote. Please, clerk.
Member Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Diesel,
Yes.
Member Stokel,
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Passes unanimously. Our intent is to try and make this work within that period, and it's not going to go on forever. I can,
Well, that's mostly my concern is how long is it going to go on? You know, because I would like to make long-term plans. And I appreciate your time and your thought and your effort and chewing it out and, you know, figuring out, you know, where you all stand and how I can help you in that. So,
and
yeah,
now you have to help her in that.
okay. All right, thank you so
Work with
much.
her.
I think Ms. Toomey has been an excellent example of someone who's tried very hard
Yes.
to make this work.
That's why we're all here talking about it.
And if we had a dozen Ms. Toomings who wanted to do this, then staff may not be as concerned, except for the fact that we do have to explain to the
No.
other
Ms.
people who
Pasaka,
come in.
I really understand your
But
plight on this.
She's done a great job of
Yes,
following
and
these
we
rules.
all feel that toward her, and we want it to work, so we're going to go a little extra effort is what we're doing. Okay, next item, please.
Next item is item C, which is ordinance number 36, 2019. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending Section 7-2D of the Code of Ordinances by changing the dates for candidates for the office of council member and mayor to file qualification papers and to pay the required qualification fees, and amending Section 7-2E by changing the recall election procedures, providing for an effective date.
The Brevard County Supervisor elections directed local municipalities to adjust their qualifying periods. This request is based on the governor's directive on April 11, 2019, to the Florida Department of State to make Spanish language ballots available for the 2020 election. This directive will require the Supervisor of Elections to send ballot language out to be translated not less than 78 days in advance of the election. In addition, Senate Bill 7066 moves the primary election back from 10 to 11 weeks before the general election to allow more time for overseas general election ballots. This will affect a number of deadlines, including the qualifying period. Based on this information, staff is recommending the changing of Titusville's qualifying period to meet the deadline of no less than 78 days prior to the election. In addition, staff revised Section 7-2E to change the recall election procedures to be in accordance with the general law of the state of Florida.
Mr. Saka, any comments on this? Any questions from council to staff? See none. Open the public hearing. Are there any cards on this, clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Council discussion, anything? Okay, I'll ask for a motion.
Move to approve ordinance number 36-2019. That was the wrong one. I'm on the wrong one, sorry. 36-2019, amending Section 7-2 of the Code of Ordinances by changing the dates for candidates for the offices of council member and mayor.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, clerk.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Diesel,
Yes.
Member Stokel,
Yes.
Member Jordan,
Yes.
Member Nelson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. City Attorney.
Next item is item D, which is small-scale amendment with rezoning SSA number 2, 2019 for 2001 South Street, parcel 514. This includes ordinances number 29, 2019, and ordinance number 28, 2019. I'll read those at this time. Ordinance number 29, 2019, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending ordinance number 60, 1988, which adopted the comprehensive plan of the City of Titusville by changing the land use designation on approximately 7.93 acres of property located at 2001 South Street, parcel 514, by replacing the low-density residential and amending the downtown mixed-use high-density residential and conservation land use designations with the downtown mixed-use, conservation, and high-density residential future land use designations, providing for an effective date. Ordinance number 28, 2019, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending ordinance number 5, 1993, by amending the zoning map made a part of said ordinance by reference by replacing the present single-family medium-density R1B zoning district and amending the multifamily high-density residential R3 and open space and recreation OR zoning districts with the multifamily high-density residential R3 and open space and recreation OR zoning districts on approximately 7.93 acres of property located at 2001 South Street, parcel 514, and providing for an effective date.
The applicant is requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment with rezoning to allow the construction of multifamily dwellings on the property located at 2001 South Street, lying south of South Street and west of North Area Community Education Whispering Hills facility. Of the approximate 11.93 acre parcel, approximately 7.93 acres are subject to this request. The property is currently designated with conservation downtown mixed use, low density residential and high density residential uses, and open space and recreation multifamily density R3 and single family density, medium density R1B zoning districts. The intent of this request is to correct conservation open space recreation OR designation on the wetland site and designate the remainder of the property as downtown mixed use and high-density residential land uses and multifamily high-density R3 zoning. The maximum number of multifamily units is 99 based on R3 density of 15 units per acre. Staff recommends the comprehensive plan amendment recommends adoption of SSA 2019. As for the rezoning, staff recommends approval of the request to rezone and replace the present single-family medium-density R1B and amend multifamily high-density R3 and open space and recreational OR zoning districts with multifamily high-density residential R3 and open space recreation OR zoning districts. The Planning and Zoning Commission, acting as your local planning agency, considered this item at their meeting on September 17, 2019, and recommended approval of SSA Ordinance 2019 as requested and reflected in the July 13, 2006 ground truthing map, subject to subsequent amendment or modification as required by updating the wetland ground truthing. The P&Z also recommended approval of the rezoning Ordinance 28, 2019 with two conditions. Number one, no road be allowed behind the lots on Hamlin Court and Lake Morebecca. Number two, no building or structure allowed within 100 feet of the rear of the property lines on Hamlin Court. In addition, Planning and Zoning requested that a code change be made to match St. Johns River Management District standards and not accept surveys more than 5 years old.
Okay, thank you. City staff, any comments?
I just wanted to try to explain this, I hope, easily. If you go to page 526, this has two maps that show the current and the proposed. You can see that on the left side, the existing future land use has a significant amount of green, which is conservation. That is the area that we have currently designated as wetlands. Based on a survey that was provided, there are significantly fewer wetlands on the property, as you can see on the right-hand side of the map, and that shows you all the brown area. So what the request is to correct the wetlands and by putting that as multifamily. This has a long zoning history. The property has been zoned apartments as early as 1966, and then it was moved into another, which was just residential in 1981. 1988, it was designated as conservation and residential, as you see today. In 2009, the former residential land use was removed and applied high-density residential, medium-density residential, or low residential to numerous properties. That changed the land use to high-density residential here. And then the zoning history was that the property was within the R3 zoning district, again, as early as 1969, and there have been a number of changes subsequent to that. The comprehensive plan has been reviewed. The proposed development is consistent with several policies in the future land use element, and the roads, water, and sewer infrastructure are available to meet the needs of this property. Staff is recommending that sewer be required on the property. I believe that that would be caught at the site plan, but we want to announce that so that the property owner understands that sewer will be required in order to build multifamily. Currently, the upland portions of the property is largely designated as conservation and open space and recreation zoning. Conversely, the areas designated as downtown mixed use and multifamily are largely wetlands. So we're basically truing up the map in this instance. We also want to say that the parcel has direct access to State Road 405, which is designated as an arterial roadway and thus is consistent with multifamily. A portion of the area is shown within flood zone X, and then there's another portion which is in the AE flood, which is the special flood hazard area. There are requirements within the special flood hazard area that have density limitations as well as compensatory storage requirements, and those will be reviewed at the site plan stage. The development in the area is a mix of single-family and multifamily dwellings. The property abuts the North Area Community Education, the West Spring Hills facility to the east, and city-owned property to the west. The proposed multifamily is applied to properties to the north. Required buffering will minimize impacts to the single-family lot residential adjacent to the property, and existing wetlands on the southern portion of the property will remain. So the staff does not feel that there's going to be a significant impact to the majority of the homes along Hamlin Court. The staff does recommend approval. I also mention that the staff has looked at the, just so you know that the current landscape yard is a 20-foot landscape buffer between multifamily and single family, which requires 7 trees, a mix of overstory, understory trees, every 200 feet, and 1 shrub every 15 feet. So there is a requirement for a landscape buffer between the single family and the multifamily. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I see one. Member Jordan?
Thanks for that explanation, Peggy. I noticed that staff was recommending this without any conditions, and noticed that P&Z did, so want to explain that?
That's correct. The 2 conditions that P&Z has recommended would be no road allowed behind the lots of Hamlin Court and Lake Morebecca, and no building or structures allowed within the 100 feet of the rear property lines of Hamlin Court. I reviewed the tape as well as the minutes of this meeting. I do not know why 100 feet was chosen as the distance. I can tell you that I've done a little bit of calculation, and this is very rough, but at least it gives you a sense. The back of the Whispering Hills facility is currently about 60 feet from the property line of the properties closest, and if you would look on page 525, I believe you can see that residential. And if you look at the house that is in the corner closest to the property, let me see which direction that is, the northwest corner, on Hamlin, that swimming pool is approximately 125 feet from the closest property line of the subject property. In addition to that, the homes on Hamlin Court, again, this is a rough measurement, are approximately 50 feet from the back property line. So that could give you perhaps a sense. 100 feet, this is probably not quite 400 feet wide, so 100 feet would be a substantial, a significant amount of property here. And I know that the applicant is here, and he can tell you his concerns or support of those conditions.
Well, my concern was more of why come up with 100 feet? I mean, if there's some technical reason that there's 100 feet.
There may be. Unfortunately, that was not expressed. So we at staff have determined that it would be in everyone's best interest to ask those questions at planning and zoning when that type of recommendation is made, so we can understand their rationale and then provide it to you.
Okay. But you don't know of any requirement that requires it?
What's required at this point?
Right now, there is a 20-foot minimum landscape, and there are setbacks that are 25 feet in the rear and 20 feet on the side in
Big difference.
multifamily.
Big difference. That's a lot of land just to be sitting there just because someone wants to have that space there, for sure.
But again, there may be, P&Z may have had a rationale, but they just didn't share that with us. So I can't share it with you.
Okay.
Through, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Member Nelson?
Peggy, you did have some questions. In the environmental study that was done, one of the questions I had was, that looks like that was done in 2005.
Yes, ma'am, that's the date.
And do we ask for an updated one, or is we just go with?
The code doesn't require, the code just says when we get a wetland survey, we will process it. Now, the Water Management District currently has 2 levels of review for wetlands. The first is kind of a general wetland survey that would be very similar to what the environmental survey is that you see here. And those last for 5 years and can be updated without, or extended, I should say, without additional information if they go out and look at that. I think that the second requires a much shorter survey, and that's actually the permitting. This project will still have to go through that permitting process.
Okay.
And so this is not saying that they can build in all the areas that are currently shown as uplands, because there may be permitting requirements, mitigation, that type of thing. In fact, the staff is very supportive of the P&Z request to amend the code to clarify that the Water Management District standard of having a 5-year survey would be an excellent idea. But right now, it just says if a survey is provided.
Okay.
So we would appreciate that, then we don't have to argue the issue. We can say that's what the code says.
I think it'd be good to have that 5 years in there.
I agree. And so
Yeah.
after this discussion, we would appreciate action on that as well, because that would be helpful to staff.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, in the environmental study, they're talking about an archaeological study for survey.
They are.
Yeah. Does that come into play at some point?
I
don't know the answer to it.
I don't know the answer either. I'm sorry. I did read that, but we don't do archaeology at the city.
Okay, so this
So
is.
does the State Historic Preservation Officer do that? I can find out that information, but I don't know it tonight.
Okay,
I'd be happy to
Yeah.
find out.
I think that'd be a good thing to find out. And then we're talking about, and I understand Mr. Fisher was at P&Z. maybe he could explain why the 100-foot setback? How did that, what happened?
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Mayor, is it on? Hi, I'm Robin Fisher, 1625 Garden Street, Titusville, Florida. I couldn't answer your question of how the 100 feet came about. It was something that one of the members thought that would be important. We're not supportive of that. We will comply with the current setbacks that this zoning requires. I would like to mention that, and your staff have been wonderful to work with through this process, but, you know, somewhere in the 92, 93 timeframe, this property was zone R3, and that through administrative zoning, it got changed. And when it was changed, there was a couple mistakes made in reference to what part of it was wet and what part of it was uplands. And so I'm just here, and what we're trying to do is correct that mistake. The current zoning has a R3 zoning in the left northwest corner.
But I'm going to ask you just to stick to the question she asked, because you will come back up right after this. And
Okay, so is your question, how did the 100 feet come about?
Yeah, I asked you that. And let me ask you one other thing. My understanding is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you agreed to no road behind the lots on Hamlin Court and Lake Morbecca. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So
Okay.
We offered that up as a.
Sort of a compromise.
And I'm Stan Retz, 1415
Hi,
South
Stan.
Washington. I'm here as his bodyguard. No, we're partners on this deal, but, no, we, in an effort to reassure the neighbors that we're not developing on the south end, we threw that out there.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
Member
you.
Stokel, do you have some questions for these people? or-
Maybe just to address, I am curious, because I'm looking at the map on page 526 and trying to figure out why P&Z had that suggestion too. And it looks like prior, the existing right now has low-density residential right next to their housing, which is R1B, is that right, Peggy? They're R1B, right?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
Hamlin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So to go from, I guess, the R1B abutting low-density residential, and now you're taking that away and now making it high-density residential, I could see potential concerns there with having R1B, high-density right next to each other. So I guess, yeah, my question would be for you, what do you guys plan to do? Or how large of a buffer are you planning? It sounds like the minimum is the 20-foot landscape buffer in between. Is that what you guys are planning to do, or what do you have planned for right next to that Hamlin area?
Yeah. So realistically, most of the development will be done in the north half of this property. And it's unrealistic, I think, if you know the terrain of that area. It's a big, huge drop off. And so we think it'd be very difficult to develop that area. So that's why, one, we offered not to put a road back there, because we don't think that it makes sense. Two, I don't know, though, we do want to have the option that is going to be required of us to put sewer. And so there's a lift station down that way. And so I understand there's some issues with that lift station, so we're not sure we would tie into that, but we want to make sure we still have the option to get sewer whichever way we feel best. And if that lift station needs some upgrading, I'm quite sure the city will require that. We still got to go through all the permitting process, but so realistically, there won't be any real development down there. But in that, right behind that one lot, I don't know if we might need some stormwater or parking. So we wanted to keep our options open in reference to that. And the other thing, just while I'm here on the archaeological issue, that's in St. John's, when you go through the permitting process, if they are the one that would make a suggestion whether that has to be done or not, and we have to meet that requirement.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I would just hate to have another Wendover that got dug up.
Yeah. No,
So,
we don't believe it has that issue, but we'll clear it through any permitting. We will go through all the permitting we have to make this site developable.
Member Stokel,
That's
anything
it,
else?
thank you.
Okay.
Member Jordan,
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Well, Of staff?
Yes, of staff,
Okay,
yeah. You were talking about sewer, and you wanted to bring that up. And you were bringing that up because what? 'Cause I just assume if you're in the city, you have to have sewer.
You do, but sometimes we like to tell people ahead of time as opposed to surprising them later. So that's really all this is.
Oh, okay.
It's just a public service announcement.
Oh, thank you, appreciate that.
Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Clerk, please call the speakers by card. Applicant first. You're up.
Mr. Fisher. our applicant.
Procedurally, you're up.
I'm here for any questions. And this doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue with us because we're meeting the requirement of the 5 years map. But just for something for y'all to consider, I think when it comes to wetlands map and things like that, I think the city is still using 1988 maps. So as you require developers or people to use a 5-year-old map, we might want to update the maps that you guys are making decisions off of too.
Might be a good idea. Any other questions from council? Any other, anything else you'd like to address at this point? I mean, you don't have to just go with the question. You can say anything you want right now.
I think staff has done a great job explaining the scenario. We're here because of a mistake that was made years ago. We're trying to correct it, determine this property has uplands on it, and we want to develop the uplands and we do not want to really impact the wetlands and not trying to, and we're not asking for any zonings to impact wetlands.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other cards?
Yes, sir. We have 4 more cards. Stan Retz,
Nothing more this time.
Stan Johnston,
I wish to speak after these other people. I don't think they would like me to speak after.
Mr. Johnston, you didn't, you
He
had
wants to go
marked
last.
neither. For against neither. We'll hear from Joyce Hartung. Are you waiving your right to speak, ma'am?
You probably, sir, will have to fill out a card after you speak if you don't have one already filled out. Oh, well, then you're next, sir.
Is this Eric Worthington?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Evening, my name's Eric Worthington, 2010 Morbeck Street. I am a Titusville native and a resident of 50 years, and I oppose this zoning change. A lot's being said about the residents of Haviland Court. Nothing's being said about the residents of Morbeck Street, which is where I live. We are the south side of that property. We are just as close as everybody in Haviland Court. We're only separated by Lake Morbeck. I bought that piece of property because of those woods behind my house. I enjoy coming home in the evening, sitting down, watching nature, sitting over the lake and watching what's going on. I think you all would agree with me that someday I'd hate to come home and see apartments in my backyard. That's not what I bought that house for. That's my small piece of paradise. I don't know that I can stop the zoning change, but I think there is some verbiage that should be changed, along with ordinance 28-2010, item number 2, where no buildings or structures allowed within 100 feet of the rear property lines of Haviland Court. I think that should also be addressed to the properties of Morbeck Street. And I would like also verbiage added that no permanent buildings or structures be put within 100 feet, since we've come up with this 100-foot number, of the designated wetlands conservation line on this property. Now, I understand Mr. Fisher and associate say they are not going to develop the back of this property. That's all words right now. I'd like something put in writing where we can keep off of these property lines. And as you mentioned, you know, the difference between 20 foot and 100 foot, to me, it's a lot for that buffer zone. 20 foot's from less than here to the wall. 100 foot's a heck of a lot more. I'd like that 100-foot buffer. And as I would also request that Mr. Fisher and his associates also do a pre- and post-construction stormwater and sewer impact assessment. And relating to that, as far as the lift stations and sewer, that one in our neighborhood is maxed out. If the power goes down for an hour, we're all bubbling in our toilets, and the city has to come put up a generator on that to keep that up and running. So that lift station in our neighborhood is at its max. So I think he should be looking into his own sewer and getting that out of our lift station. Also, the road access that's being implied, I would like that to include no access from Carroll Drive. And
You have limited time, sir, if you want to.
Pardon?
Your light's about to go red if you'd like to hurry up a little bit.
I would like also environmental surveys done and the architectural survey followed up on, please, also. Thank you.
Thank you. This is not a question, but I would like to address the first thing you said. It's not a question, sir. It's not a question. You can sit down. You said you like to see the trees out there and so forth.
Yes.
Well, we hear that a lot and things like that, and I understand that, but you don't own that property.
I understand that.
So if they meet ordinances and so forth, well, whatever, or whoever, that's what we have to go by, not your feelings of having a nice backyard. So, okay, as long as you understand that.
It was your house.
Sir?
It was your house that were building mine.
That's not the point, sir.
20 foot or what you want 100 foot?
I have to go by the rules and laws and ordinance just like you do. So want isn't the question here. It's what's legal. Okay. Next card.
Ms. Hartung?
My name is Joyce Hartung. I live at 2020 Morebecca Street in Baker subdivision. I've lived in that subdivision for 40 years, leasing in the beginning, and then we bought our property at 2020. And basically, reiterating what Mr. Worthington said, we bought it because of where it was located, and my husband was very much into wildlife. It's beautiful back there. Certainly, we don't own that property. One question I do have, though, is when was that property put up for sale? It was wetlands. That was my impression when we bought the property. That was wetlands back there. Now, we did not go into a flood zone until we had owned our property at 2020 for about 5-6 years. Then the insurance companies informed us it was floodlines. So we were required, because we had a mortgage at that time, to pay flood insurance. We're still in a flood zone. And Irma came through. My backyard was flooded up to my screen room almost, or my glass in room now. It took 3 weeks for the city to take any action. That was only after the Florida Today newspaper came out and took photographs and published what we were living through. And I have lost probably 10 to 12, maybe 15 feet of property behind my short fence in my backyard into the pond, into Pond Morebecca or Morebecca Lake, whatever. So yes, I'm very much against this. I do not want to, and I understand what the council is saying. I don't own that property back there. Just very curious as to when. I never saw any for sale signs, anything on South Street on that particular property behind my home, behind our subdivision. So I would like to know when it was put up for sale, why there was no notification. I have a little orange card sitting over there that I forgot to bring up. That was my first notification officially, that there was anything going into that property behind my home. Now granted, I was out of town, I was out of state for some time, and it was my neighbor that informed me that, do you know this is going to be happening now? So I just have a very bad feeling. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
That this was not designated, we were not informed. Thank you for your consideration.
I do have to comment again. It may be that, I don't know this, ma'am, but it may not have been up for sale. They may have approached the property, the owners of the property. There's no law broken there. You may not like it, but there's no law broken. If the owner decides to sell to somebody without putting up a sign, somebody comes in and says, do you want to sell the property? So that could have happened. I don't know. At any rate, next card, please.
Yes, sir. Our last card, Stan Johnston.
My name is Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsettia Avenue. Thank you for allowing me to speak after Joyce and Eric. I've known them for years now because we've had some issues with him, speaking with them. I was speaking with them and also Mr. Diesel's mother-in-law who lives on Carroll Avenue. My category is, I indicated neither with condition. So, but what I would like to do is I would like to be recognized as an expert witness. I have certainly I've sent the council and city attorney information on me as an expert witness. And there's issues on this property that I would like to be recognized as an expert witness.
City Attorney, aren't there certain requirements for that?
Yes, Mayor, there are processes when an individual wants to be recognized as an expert. First, before council can even decide by majority vote whether or not to accept expert testimony from you on this item, you must first state the subject matter of your intended testimony, how you're qualified through education, training, certification, experiences to render an expert opinion on the subject matter you intend to testify on, how scientific, technical, or other specialized skill is relevant to this particular agenda item, and how this testimony will help council understand the evidence being presented or establish facts at issue. So you first need to proffer that for council's consideration.
Okay, I'd like to do them one at a time. Can you give me the first one and I'll provide to you the information?
The subject matter of your intended testimony.
Okay, the subject matter has to do with a 100-year storm. The subject matter has to do with maintenance. Subject matter has to do with the dams. There's 3 dams just downstream of these homes and also this property. Subject matter concerns the failure of the city to maintain the stormwater master plan that goes under I-95 to the St. Johns River. Subject concerns that the city of Titusville has not spent 1 penny on stormwater capital improvements, at least in the last 40, perhaps over 60 years. So those are some of the matters that has to do with it. So, and also that these homes, numerous homes, are in the 100-year floodplain right now. So that's an answer to that question. Now you have another question.
You must state for council how you're qualified through education, training, certifications, and experience to render an expert opinion on that subject matter, and how any scientific, technical, or other specialized skill is relevant to this agenda item.
Okay, so I don't know if I can get all that question, but first of all, let me do the credentials and experience and certifications and so forth, okay? Let's start with that, okay. Okay, I'm a registered professional engineer, registered in 1976. Took the examination in civil engineering and mechanical engineering. I passed those, so I'm registered in those areas. In 1980, I was a professional land surveyor. I've been the engineer of record of over a dozen subdivisions in this area. I've done numerous site plans. I've done some site plans that probably I don't know if anybody else here in this area has done. In other words, I've done the site plan. I've done the field survey, the construction survey, and the final survey, and all the permitting. for a site plan here in Titusville. I don't know if anybody else has done that. So I'm also been an instructor at Brevard Community College, taught 7 different engineering courses in the civil engineering technology program. I'm Tau Beta Pi Engineering Honorary Society. I was professionally, I was also served as treasurer, vice president, president of American Society of Civil Engineers, Cape Canaveral branch. So I've also been employed by the city of Titusville and the Brevard County to review subdivisions and site plans. I've been hired that, and I have brought with me, if you wish to see them, my employee evaluations, which are very high, when I worked for the city of Titusville. So that's it. Now, what was the other question? Something like, how does it pertain to this issue?
Correct. How any of this testimony would help council understand the facts at issue on this agenda item, which is a land use and zoning decision.
Okay, exactly. I'm going to reaffirm what Mr. Fisher had said, is there's been a huge error in this particular property in which the city of Titusville used this Brevard County Soil Survey, which is full of errors, and I also, this is dated 1974, and I've been to seminars that said, do not use this for zoning. Do not use this for zoning. It's not intended, but the city of Titusville did. The wetlands maps comes from this. The 1988 wet maps comes from this. If you look at the wetlands map, you'll see that they're even just looking at them, you can see they're wrong. If you look at an aerial, you can see that this property was misjudged. City never should have done that. Should have never done with the property what they did. It was horrible what they did. I mean, they're way off. They're not a little bit off. They're way off. I mean, you can see on an aerial, you can see the white sands where they said it was wetlands. Stupid. Absolutely ridiculous. So this is something, errors that were made in 1993, the ordinance. So, okay, maybe, I'm not sure if I provided enough on that. Okay, I should have said about the 100-year storm. The 100-year storm is still a problem here. Right now is that I've sent information to Kevin Cook, he has not yet responded, about the historical water elevations of Lake Morebecca, that they are higher than what they have been in the past. And this is likely a reason for Mrs. Joyce Hartung, that she lost her property, and also Eric has also spoken with me about the water's higher. It's just not like it was. Is that when the dams were first put in at the senior center, also called weirs, is that we had flooding, catfish going in Carroll Avenue. I mean, big ones. And it was horrible for quite a while because the engineer made a huge mistake, probably at least 10 by a factor of 10. The calculations were off. And so this is significant because these houses need to be protected. This is going to be construction in an area where we have an AE zone.
Sir, you've gotten off the subject.
Pardon?
Those things don't have to do with your qualification. They have to do with your opinions. You still have to answer. You have to answer the rest of the questions the attorney's asking you.
Based on Mr. Johnston's proffer, council has to decide by majority of vote whether they believe that this testimony proposed from Mr. Johnston is proper for expert testimony on this matter, and whether you want to receive that testimony from his as an expert in this matter.
Okay. I see one light.
Okay. So unless there's a majority of council that intends to do so that would not be appropriate, they've decided they don't want to accept that testimony, you still have 3 minutes if you would like to testify.
Okay.
Well, not testify, but speak as a public on this item.
Okay. Have I answered your questions as far as, in other words, you asked me several questions to become an expert witness testimony. In fact, this is stuff that I already sent you, almost all of it.
Mr. Johnston, those are things that council needs to listen to decide whether they want or need expert testimony and whether you're an expert in that matter and whether they want to receive that testimony.
Okay.
They've decided no, there was no motion to do that.
Oh.
But I'd also like to clarify, did Are they proposing this testimony from Mr. Johnson as an expert? I just want to clarify. Or staff? Okay. Council's decided that they don't need expert testimony or don't desire expert testimony for them to understand this issue. What you've had your time now as far as qualifying, I suggest now you have 3 minutes to speak on the item.
Okay.
Please start the clock.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this time that we already went over this. Here's what's going on, is that you heard some of it already, is that I believe that you should put a condition on this property. The condition is above what you'll see in our ordinances, is that because it is in the flood zone, and since the city is right now is the water level has been reported, and as far as I can see, is higher than it has been historically. Is that, and also there's a ditch that's along Fox Lick Road that goes under 405. That deep ditch is it's over 6 feet deep, and the water's been running the wrong way. It's been running eastward instead of westward for at least the past, I expect, that's over 20 years. And I've reported to the city. It's supposed to be going the other way, according to our stormwater management plan, according to the 1985 freshwater management study, and according to other studies. The water's going the wrong way, so it's right now it's a clogged system. So we need special consideration. I'm asking you to do pre and post for the 100-year storm instead of just a 25-year storm for any project in this location, because of the likelihood of increasing the flooding. 25-year storm I don't see is enough for this situation. That's part of my recommendation. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that we have on this site something very unusual that shows you that we've got problems in this right here. We got problems. And I'll mention the page number. I'd like you to write this down. We have, right now, let's suppose there's 1 foot is on one side of a line, and the other side is on the other side of the line on this. On one side of the line is Astatula soil, on the other line is Tomoka muck. Okay, my right foot is on Astatula. Reading from page 13, the water table is below 10 feet all of the time on my right foot. Tomoka muck. Page 44, please write that down. The water is from 6 to 10 inches below the surface, 9 to 12 months in most years, and water is frequently above the surface. Understand, planning has been using this document, and my right foot is in order to get water, I have to dig a hole 10 feet deep with my right foot. The left foot is soaking wet several months of the year. Let me repeat that again. I don't think you heard it. Page 13.
And we're not going to hear it, sir. Your time is up.
I'm asking for additional time. I don't expect to get any. Thank you.
Okay. Applicant, you want to make any rebuttals? Let me just check. There are no other cards, correct?
The only thing I would say is that we agree as a condition that from Carroll Street, we have no desire for ingress and egress to come that way. We want to keep our development and ingress and egress off of South Street, so we have no issue there as far as putting a road on that part. I do want to make sure, though, that it's understood and it's for the record that we do want to keep our options open for utilities, and we don't know if we would need to come down that stretch for utilities. And if we do, we want to make sure we still have that option. And I'm not sure exactly. We haven't engineered this thing yet to figure out what do you got to do when you start going utilities down, down that path. But don't want to close that option off. And as I mentioned earlier, and for the residents that spoke tonight, where they live, that area still maintains, it's going to be green. And so they really got 500 or 600 feet or more of green space area that won't affect them and what they see. And we want to be a good neighbor. We want to develop the site. We want to develop it on the uplands portion. But we do not want to tie our hands on what this development could look like by putting a ridiculous 100-foot setback on it when there's plenty of green space already there. Any questions, Nate? Stan, you?
I see that. Oh, wait, I do.
I'd just like to add, I think the two main,
No, you got to,
When they're done.
oh, okay, okay. It's not for you. Is yours for staff or? Okay, everybody wants to speak to staff, saying, if you have something further you want
I
to.
just want to say in summary, I mean, we're trying to correct an error that was made in the past. We're not planning on impacting any of the wetlands, as the current zoning would allow us to do. As Mr. Fisher already said, we do not agree to the 100-foot arbitrary. It just came up at the last minute. But our intentions are absolutely to not develop on the south side. It wouldn't be economically feasible if we wanted to, but we would not, the zoning we're requesting would not allow us to. So there'll be plenty of green space down on the south side. And while I'm not an engineer, I believe that the stormwater on site that would be required post-development would probably improve the stormwater flow, not make it worse. Although I'm not an expert. I'm an accountant. Thanks.
Wait
Hold on one second. Hearing, you guys talked a little bit about the lift station may have problems, and certainly a resident spoke more clearly about the lift station in that area having problems, and anytime we have an electrical problem, we got to get a generator out there. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm going to go with that. My question then would be, do you have a plan for that to add a lift station, or are we too far in advance?
We're too far in advance. We have not designed or engineered this. I'm just assuming that if that lift station has some issues, that it will be addressed in the permitting process, and that the city would ask us to either upgrade it or do our own lift station or something like that if it's at capacity.
But you are aware of the possible situation, and you're planning to deal with it as it comes up?
We met with the neighbors, and the neighbors indicated to us that there was a problem there. So we understand that, and we're willing to do what we need to do to make that work. Our preference, to be honest with you, sir, would be to go out on South Street for our sewer needs.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Member Stokel?
Thank you. Okay, Peggy. So looking at this, and this is to address the neighbors on Morebecca, because, and the reason I didn't mention it was because I saw so much green space there. It looks to me, from looking at the map, there is about, 75, 100 feet maybe of height on the corner?
Are you asking, if we look on page 526?
526 is what I'm looking at, yes.
The length that the area that is being shown is becoming residential?
High-density residential, yes.
Yes.
It looks like to me from the legend, it's about 75 to 100 feet.
I would agree with that.
Okay, and then could you clarify for me, so we know there's a 20-foot setback on, is that abutting the R1B? Is that the same for the conservation as well?
No, the conservation doesn't have a setback because
Okay.
we would expect it to remain in its natural condition.
Okay, so there could potentially be 80 feet there that would have to have housing, parking, and then
I just
don't think I could see that happening.
I think that my view of this is that the area, the north half of this property is wide enough to put in something. I think that the south area would be so constrained.
That's what, even that little sliver I'm seeing, I don't even know how you would get a road.
Well, I'm not sure, because a road right-of-way is usually about 50 feet, and I don't
Yeah.
even, so, and they've already said they don't want a road.
Right.
And I can't imagine that there would be enough, once you get a setback to the conservation, to the wetland, as well as a setback along the property line, that is usable. Certainly, the developer has, or Mr. Fisher has said that his intent is to keep this on the north half. And he said that again this evening.
And I completely agree. I know Mr. Fisher and I trust him. But just to give the residents some reassurance, if somebody else came in and even this went through, I just don't foresee them being able to meet city criteria for them to do, I think, what you guys are thinking, worst case scenario happening. So I don't know if that gives you some reassurance, but
I would just mention that it's very expensive to have to extend sewer and water lines. So you want a compact development, or it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
So just from economics alone, I really don't anticipate that there would be much unless they have to come from the south to put in a sewer line.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, but we're looking forward to this. At least I am.
Thank you. I have a question. Ms. Pasaka, somewhere the applicant asked about utility and retaining the rights to do something with the utility. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Can you
Yes, sir. What,
address
I
that?
think that the issue was that while he does not want a road to extend south into the Carroll Avenue, Morebecca, that he would like the ability, if the engineering works out, to extend a pipe.
So you would have to determine whether that's needed.
Yes, sir, because you have to look at, when it comes to sewer, you have to look at it flowing into downhill or pumping it with a pump station, and the pump station is always more expensive. So it's going to be a matter of the engineer working this out.
Okay, so that's still there then. Okay. Any other council discussion? We'll close the public hearing, and I will accept a motion.
Thank
You,
Do we have to do both?
you will be voting on both ordinances separately. First
Okay.
ordinance number 29, then you will be voting on ordinance number 28.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 29-2019. Is that enough? I guess that's enough. Right? Okay,
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
second.
Second with discussion.
Well,
I have
yeah,
a second from Member Stokel with discussion, for discussion, rather.
Yeah, so if we're going to include the no roads condition
No.
and the,
ingress, egress.
yes.
No,
No, not that one. The St. Johns River Water Management District standards not accept surveys more than 5 years. I don't know which
yeah, we're
ordinance
going
that would go
That'll be a
in.
separate.
That's a
from
separate
this.
issue.
Yeah,
You'll
that's
you'll have to do advisability after you.
What
vote
about
on
the
these
no
two.
roads one?
no.
Would that go in the first one or the second one?
I would put that in the zoning,
Does that, okay,
the second.
okay. Perfect. That's all.
Okay.
That was my discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not, need a roll call vote?
Where's Dan?
Since Vice Mayor Diesel is not
He's
returned,
out.
we'll go
He's
Member
out.
Stokel,
Yes.
Member Jordan,
Yes.
Member Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes, passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir?
I move that we approve ordinance number 20-2019 without condition.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Wait, which one did he say?
Second it. We can discuss it after the second.
Did you say?
Since Member Diesel
Oh, you want to
just
say it
walked in,
again?
would
Okay.
you please repeat your motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 28-2019 without condition. The condition was no road allowed behind the lots, and then no building or structures allowed within 100 feet of the rear property lines, which he explained that he's not going to do that anyhow, so.
And I believe the
Why
applicant
would-
also agreed to a condition
Of the road.
about not accessing the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That's-
that,
Ingress, egress on Carroll.
Sure, we're on the same page. Our position is that we will not access
Right.
the neighborhood on Carroll Street.
Right.
Right here, I don't know if that could be a parking or stormwater or something like that, so I'm being cautious about when you say, we will not have ingress and egress down here, create a road there, but if I had a little road to a parking spot or something, am I in violation?
I don't think so. Well, if you got the 100
Let's
feet,
get somebody who.
but we don't have the 100 feet on there. It's not a condition, so it can't be a violation.
As written in here, it is a condition. We do not want the 100-foot.
Right.
And per
I think
Member
you just
Jordan's
read it.
motion, it wouldn't have been.
I have a motion that does not have 100
Eliminated
feet
it.
in there, so you don't have a condition.
I think you said it a minute ago.
Yeah.
If you could clarify it for us, that'd be great.
I think we were putting a
Without the
condition that we wouldn't require ingress and I think we were putting a condition we wouldn't have ingress and egress on Carroll Street.
All right.
But, you know, so we're going to eliminate that, and that's what
Right.
we're saying.
Let's keep it to at least 2 or 3.
All right, the clarification that I have is the developer is told the neighbors that he would not do this, put the roads in there, but you want to have the option to put a line in if you need to. I'm taking the condition away for your 100 feet clearance. So if you have to go in there and put a line in there, you can do that. It doesn't have, you don't have that condition anymore.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
That clarified the motion. Now I need a second.
Okay. Second with discussion.
Okay?
Okay.
Can I clarify, are we, the road, so that was the first condition. The second one, and maybe that's where I'm confused, it said, no road allowed behind the lots of Hamlin Court and Lake Morebecca. I think you guys said you were okay with that, but then you're concerned about that one piece.
Yeah, right. So this still has some
Right.
uplands here.
Okay.
I don't know how, from the design standpoint, that might be where the stormwater might end up going in that area. And could that be some additional parking? So I
Okay.
didn't want the word road become, well, you violate it because you've got parking behind there or something. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
City Council, may I please beg your, could you clarify, are we approving ordinance 28 without conditions?
Yes.
Correct. The current motion is to approve ordinance number 28, 2019 with no conditions. So the discussion we just had about conditions are not currently included within the motion. So if you approve this, the discussion about access, road, none of that is going to be imposed upon this development if you approve the motion as stated.
Okay, I thought we just said though.
I thought we just said we were going to.
Correct.
That was a discussion. The motion from
Oh, I see. I would need to amend.
you could
Potentially.
ask. Only the motion maker could amend his motion.
Okay.
That's right. I'm not amending my motion.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my second then.
Well, you can't do that.
Yes, I can.
Yes, you can.
I know she can, but I was
Well,
just
then
saying.
don't say.
Because I want to have this condition of the road,
Does
which
your-
they agreed to.
All
And
right.
Peggy
She
knows they
withdrew-
can still have their parking
All
lot.
right, let's make it clear. I understand exactly what you want. You do not want to have a road there. What we're
Correct.
trying to get clarification for the developer is that he have to put a sewer line in there.
That's
He'll be
fine.
able to do that. And Peggy said,
So
okay.
this is how I would read the motion.
Okay.
That no road would be permitted, or to create access to Carroll
Yes.
Avenue.
All right.
That parking, stormwater are permitted in the area.
Right.
And that you could also extend utility lines as necessary.
Right.
That's what I
Yeah.
see. So we can say utility, parking and stormwater would be okay, but no road, so to create access to Carroll Avenue.
Exactly.
Motion.
That's my motion, sir.
Now, do I have a second? to the
Second.
motion? Now I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question. I really. and
No,
it's
that's
got nothing-
okay. It's all right.
And the more I listen, the more I feel like I need to ask this. Is Carroll Avenue involved in this at all? All right, that's important because as Stan's pointed out many times, I have an in-law who lives there. And if that's part of that, I need to maybe back up. But I don't think I
Not just your
do.
in-law for every in-law. Sir, you can't talk from the audience, sir. You have to be recognized and come up here. There's no microphone out there. It has to go on the tape. Sir, you're next.
Yeah, sir, if we were extending the road, more than likely it would be coming up Carroll Avenue, straight up the eastern part of the property. And we've said with her motion, Robert's motion, that we wouldn't do that.
And I kind of
Your
understood where you're
mother-in-law,
going.
whatever.
No, I understood where you're going with that, but I keep hearing the term Carroll Avenue. I thought I'd better at least full disclosure out there.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yes, sir.
Well, it's our opinion, there's no direct connection with Carroll Avenue whatsoever. Whether or not somebody on Carroll Avenue may feel that there's an indirect involvement, that would be up to them. But
Okay, thank you.
Our project, our proposal, our request has nothing to do with Carroll Avenue.
City Attorney, I'm good.
Yes, there's going to be a conflict of interest if you were to derive or relative a direct special benefit or gain from this vote.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Yes, and thank you very much, Council. Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes,
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
passes unanimously.
Sir, now in addition, on this item, P&Z also requested a code change be made to match the St. Johns River Management District standards and not accept surveys greater than 5 years. Would you like us to do advisability for that action?
Yes. We have a consensus. All right. Next item, wherever that is. Next item, please.
Yes, sir. The applicant, Honeycutt and Associates, on behalf of the property owner, Antini Properties LLC, is requesting to amend the existing zoning designation on a property totaling 0.59 acres located at 486 North Washington Avenue, on the south side of Washington Avenue between Elaine Drive and De Leon Avenue. While light industrial services and warehousing M1 zoning district is consistent with the downtown mixed-use future land use category, the requested rezoning, the two community commercial CC zoning district may be preferable along with major corridors within the city. The zoning is being requested to permit sales of vehicles in addition to vehicle repair and service currently conducted on site. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this item at their meeting on September 17th and recommend approval 5-0.
Mayor, I'd like to read the ordinance at this time. This is ordinance number 30, 2019, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending ordinance number 5, 1993 of the City of Titusville by amending the zoning map made a part of said ordinance by reference by replacing the present light industrial services and warehousing M1 zoning with community commercial CC zoning for a 0.59 acre property located at 486 North Washington Avenue, providing for an effective date.
Okay. Staff, you're on.
Just want to say that the previous zoning actions on this property are interesting. It has been retail, drive-in car service, single-family, multifamily, medium-density, business, and industrial. This is like the rainbow of zoning categories.
They didn't miss the zoning, did they?
It's gone everything. But the current request is to go to community commercial to allow car sales. And the applicant understands that there are going to be some changes to setbacks because of this, and they're going to work through this when they come in to do the site plan that will be required. The staff has reviewed this and found that the zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan for several policies, including future land use policy 1.1.4. The property's been developed since the 70s, so there really is no environmentally sensitive area. There's no concurrency-related areas and issues, and this property is in an area which has both commercial and industrial, as well as mobile home parks on the other side of US 1. So the staff finds that this could certainly fit into this area and may actually be a better use along US 1 than the industrial that is there currently. The staff's recommendation is to approve the rezoning request.
Okay. Council, any other questions? I see none. I'll open the public hearing. Clerk, are there cards on this?
Yes, sir. Just one card. Rodney Honeycutt.
And there he is.
Is this on? Yeah. Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. Staff explained it very well. It's only to allow sale of used cars, and it's a less intense use. Staff recommended approval. P and Z recommended approval unanimously. So do I. Any questions?
It's nice to have a united front. Okay. Any other questions? Any questions of Mr. Honeycutt? Thank you, sir. Council discussion on this? None? I'll close the public hearing. I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve rezoning number 2-2019.
Second. I have a motion and a second.
Gotta make sure.
Any
it's
further
okay.
discussion?
Should I say more?
I just want to clarify, because
Yeah.
was the motion to approve rezoning number 2, 2019?
Yes.
Should also include ordinance number 30,
Right.
2019.
That's what I asked.
That's what I
Should
was
say more?
hesitating on. I'm glad you jumped in.
I saw him doing these numbers. I said, uh-oh, I should have said more, yeah.
Just,
And to adopt ordinance number 30-2019.
okay, is that your
That's my motion,
the
yes.
second hold?
Oh, yes.
Okay. We need a roll call vote.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next item, please.
Next item is ordinance's first reading, 10A, ordinance number 37, 2019, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances related to membership of the Titusville Environmental Commission by amending Chapter 31, Agencies and Boards, Section 31-122, Appointments and Terms of Office, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code.
The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this ordinance at their meeting on September 17th, 2019, recommend approval of this action. This is your first reading, and should you have any discussion, it'll be with us.
City staff, are you still with us?
No, it'll be with us, sir. It doesn't really,
No?
it doesn't involve Peggy.
Oh, it doesn't? I'm
Nope.
sorry. Okay. All right. Okay, is there any discussion? I see none. All right. Are there any speakers on, any cards on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, there is no vote on this, so we can just continue. Beg pardon? We are at the end. There's no old business, there's no new business. Any petitions, requests from the public present? Nope. Nope, okay. And next is the mayor's report. You have my written report. Council reports.
I have a short one. I just want to report that actually Chief Lau and I were able to attend a community panel discussion on Saturday morning at the community center. I do not know her first name, so I apologize, but Ms. Bell from the community put this together. And there was probably 100, 150 people in there. And it went about 3 hours. And I want to tell you, I came out feeling outstanding about the collaboration and together with our community. They're very supportive of what we're trying to do in the city with our community. And just felt very good about that. And I thought Chief Lau did a great job of representing our city and our police, and I sat next to him up there on the panel as well. So I just want to say it was a very positive experience and moving forward. Before we go to any other reports, I missed two comments I wanted to make under my report, and I just saw my notes. The meetings that are listed, the Greater Titus and, the GT, I guess the NBEDZ. No, it's the GTR meeting was canceled, that it says I was going to. It was canceled, and I was unable to make the event at Canaveral National Seashore due to last-minute scheduling conflict that I had. So other than that, everything else is right. Okay, any other, Member Stokel?
Thank you. Couple things. The delegation meeting is tomorrow, and I think, Mayor, I think you're going to that. Is that correct? Too?
Mm-hmm.
I should be there. Okay. So that's tomorrow at 2:00. So I just wanted to let anybody know that if they didn't. I went to Lagoon Straight Talk last night it was similar to the one we had here in Titusville over in Cocoa Beach. And I tell you, every time I go, I feel like I learn more stuff, and it's like I keep thinking I'm getting it, and then it's like, oh, well, what about this? But what was really cool to see, well, the bad news was I feel like we never have enough money to fix all the problems, so it's always a little depressing. But then it was cool to see the projects listed and everything that Titusville's doing. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our city manager and our department, just going after those grants and those funds to get those baffle boxes and the infrastructure and really working on that. Because there was a lot. There was people there obviously complaining about the spills that have happened down south, and a lot of citizens concerned about that, and why is this not getting fixed, and the constant discussion about fixing the piping and the infrastructure. So I just wanted to say kudos to our city staff, because I think they're doing an amazing job really trying to get ahead of that with obviously limited funds. Our Space Coast League of Cities, they're going to be at the delegation tomorrow. We finalized our priorities, so just to give you guys a brief overview. Continued efforts for the Indian River Lagoon restoration, coastal resiliency planning, funding for space exploration, technical and vocational education, again, short-term vacation rentals, and we're trying to approach that a little bit differently this time around. Still working on the smoking in public areas, so local governments can hopefully regulate that with our parks. And then home rule as well. And then last thing is action item for you guys, if you guys would approve me to attend the legislative conference in November. And that's all I have for you guys, but we do have to vote on that. Orlando, I believe. Yep.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
And it's unanimous.
Thank you, guys. And that's all I have.
Next, any other council reports? City manager?
Yes, sir. Pleased to announce that the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Boulevard signage is in your packet. It shows the renderings and the installation information on that. And we are going to meet our goal to have it up before the Dr. Martin Luther King annual parade on South Street. And again, tomorrow is the legislative delegation, and Thursday we'll have dinner at the Indian River Preserve for the city boards and commission annual recognition dinner. Subject to your questions, it concludes my report.
Any questions? I see none, sir. Thank you. City attorney, do you have a report?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have completed our mission. I will declare this meeting adjourned.